Chapter 416. He's keeping me in suspense again. He's really making me anxious to death. Chu Qingyan despised him in her heart, then said to him in a flattering tone, "Then may I ask, young master, what method do you have to enter?" Knowing that she didn't mean what she said, Higashio Motetsu didn't bicker with her because he had his own plans. "Unfortunately, I know how to get an invitation," he said calmly. "Then may I ask you to bring me along?" Chu Qingyan helped him change his teacup and personally poured him a cup of tea as she asked politely. The little lass was so submissive. Other than when he kidnapped her, he rarely saw her this obedient. Higashio Motetsu took the tea she offered and said leisurely, "It's not impossible to bring you along." In the instant that the other party's eyes lit up, he continued, "It's just that this young master has never done a losing transaction, so you have to show your sincerity." "Didn't you say that we're friends? Is there a need to bicker over this kind of thing?" Chu Qingyan smiled embarrassedly. "Haven't you heard that even blood-related brothers have to settle accounts clearly?" Higashio Motetsu deliberately saw her helpless expression and calmly retorted. Chu Qingyan's face darkened. He had said so much, but didn't he still come back to the original point? She even thought that he was a righteous person, but she really couldn't judge a book by its cover. She was annoyed and snatched the teacup that Higashio Motetsu had delivered to her mouth. She drank it in one gulp, wiped the corner of her mouth, and went straight to the point. "Tell me the truth, what do you want? As long as I can give it to you." Seeing her gulp it down, Higashio Motetsu felt that it was a pity for the tea to disappear just like that. However, he didn't care. Hearing her ask so directly, he didn't beat around the bush. Sometimes, there was a limit to teasing people. For the sake of the long term, he should stop. Otherwise, if the little lass got angry and bit him, wouldn't he lose this kind of benefit in the future? "This young master helped you once, so you owe me a favor," Higashio Motetsu said unhurriedly. Sure enough, he had revealed his fox tail. Chu Qingyan nodded without hesitation. "Tell me, what do you want me to do?" No. Higashio Motetsu stretched out a finger and waved it in front of her eyes. "This young master hasn't thought about it yet. I'll tell you when I think about it." "What a thief!" Chu Qingyan cursed in her heart. "Are you secretly scolding this young master?" Higashio Motetsu saw her furrowed brows and gritted teeth and quickly deduced her mental activity. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes at him. "You're thinking too much. Am I the kind of person who would secretly curse people? If I want to curse people, I will do it openly. Little girl, you have to know that there is no free lunch in this world. If a pie falls from the sky, then you have to guard against it. Do you understand?" Higashio Motetsu pointed out to her. His expression was no longer as casual as before and had a trace of seriousness. "You make it sound like you're so open and aboveboard, but aren't you just adding insult to injury and taking advantage of the situation?" Chu Qingyan muttered in dissatisfaction. Higashio Motetsu slightly raised his phoenix eyes and his voice was filled with resentment. "Little girl, I'm helping you. How can you repay kindness with enmity?" Chu Qingyan said disapprovingly, "If you don't ask for compensation, I will be even more grateful to you." "Alright, don't be angry. This is the rule of the pugilistic world. You should get used to it soon." Higashio Motetsu acted like he was coaxing a child as he reached out to pat her head. Chu Qingyan leaned to the side and avoided his outstretched hand. She said with a serious expression, "Men and women should not touch each other. Don't get touchy." Higashio Motetsu's eyes narrowed. This little fellow really knew how to treat people differently. She did not treat Xiao Su as an outsider. He knew that she was on guard against him and he did have his own plans. However, he was only interested in this little girl for a while. When he was tired of her, he would not have such thoughts. Chu Qingyan raised her head and saw him leaning against the back of the chair with a faint smile. His eyes were faint and distant. She thought that he was thinking about something again and did not think too much about it. And she told In Yening Ma what she wanted them to do, and then took Duguqing back. "So fast? Don't you have something to do?" Because Higashio Motetsu was present, Duguqing asked vaguely. "No need. Let's go back." Although she did not find out anything, she still gained something from this trip. At this time, she did not have any intention to stay. Duguqing did not ask anything else. She nodded to Higashio Motetsu and followed Chu Qingyan to leave. Watching Chu Qingyan's figure disappear at the door, Higashio Motetsu picked up his cup and slowly drank. The granny who had served Chu Qingyan and Duguqing earlier walked over. Her expression was no longer as eager and fawning as before. Instead, it was filled with respect. "Young palace master, since you are going to the Blue Manor to help that person search for something, why don't you letting Yen Ma tell her where it is?" The mama asked in confusion. "I was going to make a trip to the Blue Manor. It's a little boring to be alone, so I brought her along to relieve my boredom. Besides, do I look like a kind person?" Higashio Motetsu smiled mysteriously. He was afraid that Chu Qingyan, who had walked out, did not know that this heavenly fragrance house was his property. However, he liked the feeling of having everything under control. At this time, Chu Qingyan and Duguqing were on their way back. "Why did you leave before we found out the whereabouts of the ice crystal flower?" After leaving the heavenly fragrance house, Duguqing did not have any scruples and asked the question in her heart. Chu Qingyan was still thinking about what happened just now. When she heard her question, she replied, "It seems that we can't find out its whereabouts at the moment." She paused and suddenly said, "Sister Dugu, do you know about the existence of the underground Blue Manor?" Duguqing was a little surprised to hear these words. "Why are you suddenly asking this? Was it that Higashio Motetsu who told you just now?" Chu Qingyan did not hide anything from her and told her what Higashio Motetsu had told her. Duguqing nodded her head in understanding. "He's right. This Blue Manor is very mysterious. If you want to find out more information, that place is indeed a good place. However, I've heard quite a lot of rumors about it. It has many rules, and if you accidentally violate them, your end will be very miserable." Duguqing's words were similar to what Higashio Motetsu had said, so Chu Qingyan was relieved. It wasn't that she had a problem with Higashio Motetsu, but when she went out, she had to be careful. "Since he has a way to get an invitation, then bring me along with you. I've long wanted to see this mysterious organization that walks between the imperial power and the common people." Duguqing grabbed her hand and pleaded. Chu Qingyan looked at her excited eyes and her scalp went numb. Dong Ting said that he can only bring one person, so I'm sorry, Sister Dugu. "So petty." Duguqing pursed her lips. Then she leaned forward and said maliciously, "Little Qing, you want to go alone? Don't forget that you still have Big Ice Cube at home. Would he bear to let you take the risk?" Chu Qingyan heard this and felt a headache coming on. Chapter 417. Chu Qingyan scratched her head. "Big Sister Dugu, can you cover for me?" "Depends on your performance." Duguqing smiled slyly. Chu Qingyan felt that it was really unfortunate to have bad friends like them who liked to take advantage of a burning house. Returning to the Yi estate, she happened to bump into Yi Lingfeng, who was preparing to go out. Duguqing was still holding a grudge against him for what happened 2 days ago, so she deliberately snorted coldly in front of him and left with a flick of her sleeves. Yi Lingfeng watched her leave, the folding fan in his hand fanning himself unnaturally. Is young Master Yi preparing to go out? Chu Qingyan was afraid that he would feel awkward, so she took the initiative to ask. I have an appointment with a friend. I'm going to attend the banquet." Yi Lingfeng quickly regained his elegant demeanor, without the slightest bit of uneasiness from before. Chu Qingyan nodded. "Then young Master Yi, please go ahead. I won't disturb you any further." She was about to leave when Yi Lingfeng called out to her. "Is there anything else, young Master Yi?" Chu Qingyan was puzzled. "You went to Heavenly Fragrance House today?" Yi Lingfeng hesitated for a moment before speaking. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. "You sent someone to follow us?" Seeing Chu Qingyan's vigilant expression, Yi Lingfeng hurriedly explained, "Miss Chu, please don't misunderstand. I didn't send anyone to follow you, but I saw that both of you were dressed in men's clothing, so I guessed." Chu Qingyan immediately relaxed. She was worried that her conversation with Higashio Motetsu would be leaked, but she was still puzzled. "How did you know?" It was difficult to convince people with just men's clothing. She rarely wears men's clothes. Once she does, she will go to those places. She is not someone who does not know her limits. Since she dares to bring you out, she will naturally go to the Heaven Fragrant Inn, Yi Lingfeng said with a smile. He did not see the ambiguous smile on Chu Qingyan's face because of his words. I see. I didn't expect young Master Yi to know big sister Dugu so well. Chu Qingyan looked at him meaningfully. Ahem. Yi Lingfeng covered his mouth with his fan and coughed lightly, avoiding Chu Qingyan's words. Then he said, in the future, you should not go to that kind of place. It is not good for your girl's reputation. Chu Qingyan had already planned to leave, but since Yi Tianyun had brought up the topic, she did not want to let it go. We are going there for business, but since young Master Yi is so kind, why don't you tell Sister Dugu about it yourself? I think she will be very happy. I'm afraid she'll say that I only allow the state officials to set fires, but not the common people. Yi Lingfeng imagined her reaction and felt helpless. Looking at Yi Lingfeng's expression, he didn't seem to be uninterested in Dugu Qing. Chu Qingyan took the opportunity to add fuel to the fire. You can even guess what kind of reaction she will have. You really have a tacit understanding. That's all I have to say. Be careful in the future. Hearing Chu Qingyan's words, Yi Lingfeng's expression changed slightly, and he immediately took his leave. Chu Qingyan looked at his back as he left. She seemed to see a guilty conscience. It seemed that Dugu Qing's pursuit of her husband was not in vain. It was just that the revolution had not succeeded yet. She still needed to work hard. She was looking forward to this couple. She had even thought of a couple name for them. They would be called unique or intentional couple. Thinking about it, it really sounded wonderful. Chu Qingyan happily walked towards her courtyard. Because she was so relaxed, she did not see the big Buddha standing at the door. You're back? A cold voice sounded from the side. Chu Qingyan subconsciously stopped in her tracks. The big ice cube's tone was not right. She had a bad feeling. Her neck stiffened, and she turned to look at the source of the voice. A smile instantly appeared on her face. I'm back. Under the plum tree, a slender figure stood upright like a pine tree. Above his head were brilliant plum blossoms. They were pink and white little by little. She could not see the shape of the flowers. She could only feel the faint colors, as if creating a beautiful dream. Unfortunately, when she saw the unsmiling face under the tree, her dream was shattered. Where did you go to play? That strict person was like an elder who had caught a disobedient child and was forcing her to confess. I went to the tea house. She touched the back of her head and smiled guiltily. Xiao Su glanced at her hands. Didn't you say you were going to buy something? What did you buy? The big ice cube's eyes were really sharp. Chu Qingyan took a deep breath in her heart. Just as she was thinking of how to smooth things over, she heard him say coldly, Qing, come here. She instantly looked up and saw the expressionless person under the plum tree. Her heart was a little uneasy, but her body reacted faster than her mind. When she stood in front of him, she realized that her height had already reached his chest. In a few years, would she be able to reach his shoulders? Xiao Su lowered his head. Feeling her wandering gaze, his eyes turned cold. Show me the swordsmanship once. He suddenly ordered. Chu Qingyan was shocked back to her senses. What she received in response was a long sword. Chu Qingyan reached out to catch the long sword he threw at her. She did not dare look at him as she immediately brought the sword to the center of the yard. Unsheathing the sword, she began to practice without any hesitation. She did not know why the big ice cube suddenly wanted to see her practice, but she did not dare disobey him. She had a feeling that the big ice cube was angry. But why was he angry? She could not understand it at all. She could only follow his wishes and secretly ask Hualing and the others what had happened in the afternoon when she wasn't here. The second move, the fifth move, and the eighth move, your posture is wrong and you don't have enough strength. As punishment, you will practice this set of swordsmanship 3 times. From now on, you're not allowed to be lazy. When she was about to put away her sword after practicing once, she was panting, but she heard this thunder from the clear sky. She wanted to go forward and ask for an explanation in disbelief, but seeing his calm expression, she swallowed her questions. Actually, she knew that there was a problem with her swordsmanship and she wanted to improve it over the past few days. If the big ice cube had gently pointed it out to her, she would have been very happy. But punishing her like this today made her feel a bit resentful. But after he finished speaking, he had already turned around, leaving her alone in the yard. Although her heart was uncomfortable, she still picked up the sword and began practicing. After she finished practicing, she was almost completely exhausted. She was covered in sweat as she used the sword to support her body. When she raised her hand to wipe her sweat, she was surprised to find that there was another person in the yard. Turin. Turin, what happened to His Highness today? She asked while panting. Master knows that you went to the heavenly fragrance house. Turin simply replied. What? Chu Qingyan was a bit surprised. Turin explained, if the little princess can think of going to a place with a lot of people, Xiao cavalry would not let go of those places. The scout happened to see you at the heavenly fragrance house. Chu Qingyan wanted to cover her face. It's over, the big ice cube knew. No wonder his attitude was so strange today. Master dislikes being lied to the most. Turin emphasized. I'll explain to him now. She ran off. Turin looked at her quickly leaving figure and shook his head with a smile. Towards the little princess, Master was already too lenient. Chapter 418. Chu Qingyan quickly ran to Xiao Su's room, but did not see him. She immediately changed direction and went to the study, but there was no trace of him inside. The courtyard was only this big, where could he have gone? Chu Qingyan was a bit discouraged as she walked back with her head drooping. A pair of black boots suddenly appeared in front of her, looking a bit familiar. Her eyes lit up, big ice cube. You're looking for me? Xiao Su looked at her with a calm face, no longer having the cold look from before. The person in front of her had already recovered, so Chu Qingyan was stunned by his question. She had rushed over in a hurry, wanting to explain to him, but she did not know what to explain, so she was at a loss for words. Xiao Su saw her standing there in a daze and remembered what happened before, so his face did not look right. He looked away from her and planned to leave. Just as he was about to pass by, a pair of hands suddenly grabbed his arm, looking a bit cautious. Xiao Su stopped in his tracks, not saying a word. Actually, he did not know what to say to her at this time. Just now, he had used the excuse that her moves were wrong to punish her. At this time, he was already a bit regretful. But who was he? He was once the commander of the 3 armies, an all-powerful person in the Sichuan. There was no one that could make him feel guilty. He couldn't swallow his pride and apologize no matter what. I'm sorry. Chu Qingyan mustered her courage and stammered out her apology. As soon as her voice fell, Xiao Su's body froze. This little fellow apologized to him? Why are you sorry? He subconsciously asked, but then he realized that his voice was a bit strange. After saying the most difficult words, the stone in her heart had been removed. The following words were not that hard to say, but she still did not dare to look at him. I shouldn't have lied to you. I didn't go by anything, I went to the heavenly fragrance house with Duguqing. She said softly. Xiao Su did not expect her to confess, so he was a bit surprised. Looking down, he could only see her back facing him. Her head was lowered, looking very docile. What for? He asked. Since the ice cube was paying attention to her, it meant that there was still a chance. She was slightly delighted and told him the truth. I wanted to find out more information. Big Sister Dugu said that the heavenly fragrance brothel was the place with the most gossip, so we went there. Don't be angry, I didn't mean to lie to you. From the little fellow's slightly anxious tone, it was obvious that she was very concerned about his mood. Xiao Su's brows relaxed, but when he thought of what his subordinate had reported, his brows furrowed again. Who is that man from the heavenly fragrance restaurant? He remembered that when she first came to the Jiang Kingdom, she basically went in and out with him, so it should be impossible for her to meet outsiders. When he heard from his subordinates that the little fellow was talking and laughing with him, and their behavior was somewhat intimate, he was very displeased. So when he learned that she had returned, he couldn't control himself. Chu Qingyan's face froze. These fierce blade cavalry were truly gossipy, to actually tell Big Ice Cube all of this. But the most important thing now was to appease Big Ice Cube. It could be seen that Big Ice Cube was very concerned about her casually making friends with people, probably afraid that she didn't recognize people clearly. However, in order to smoothly go out and participate in the lawn manners transaction, she had to conceal Higashio Motetsu's identity a little. Otherwise, if Big Ice Cube was dissatisfied and didn't let her go out, then the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. I'll confess, I'll be lenient. Chu Qingyan immediately replied. Speak. Xiao Su was very satisfied with her attitude. That person is called Higashio Motetsu. I met him when I was in Sichuan. I don't know what he does, but he has helped me a lot. This time, when I came to the Jiang Kingdom, I didn't expect to meet him, so we chatted for a while. What she said was all true, but there were some things that she concealed a little, such as his martial arts weren't weak, and that he followed them all the way, but she didn't know what his purpose was. However, she still didn't know what Higashio Motetsu wanted to do, so she didn't want to rashly tell Big Ice Cube. After all, Higashio Motetsu didn't do anything bad. If everything was just her own guess, she didn't want to wrongly accuse a good person. Xiao Su lightly replied. Big Ice Cube isn't angry with me? She gathered her courage and raised her head to look at him, her eyes wide open, her watery eyes filled with caution. Seeing her like this, no matter how big Xiao Su's emotions were, they all disappeared in the ripples in her eyes. In fact, Xiao Su didn't care about that man's identity, but felt that a person who had no secrets in front of him suddenly had something that he didn't know about, and still hid it from him. He felt that something was wrong. Did I say I was angry with you? Xiao Su coldly said. You didn't. Chu Qingyan turned around and hugged his arm tightly. She was a little confused. But I felt that you were a little different from how you usually are. Xiao Su looked away and said unnaturally, Did I? Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes, thinking that this Big Ice Cube who didn't mean what he said was really cute. No. Big Ice Cube has always been so gentle and kind, considerate and amiable. Why would he be angry? She said with a smile. Gentle and kind? Considerate and amiable? Don't talk nonsense. Xiao Su raised his hand and gave her a chestnut, but that light force didn't look like a punishment at all. Chu Qingyan pretended to cover her head and wailed, Big Ice Cube hit someone, it's terrible. Xiao Su looked at a certain someone who was insatiable, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. However, when she ran forward and didn't forget to turn back and make a face at him, his heart sank. He knew that his behavior was a little abnormal today. But when the little fellow was close to him, he finally understood the reason. When he heard that she had lied to him and then met someone else at the Heavenly Fragrance restaurant, he felt that something that belonged to him had been touched by someone else. That was his little fellow, and he wouldn't allow anyone to covet her. Ever since he was young, he had never wanted anything in particular, such as power, gold and silver, or the throne. But at this moment, he suddenly had the urge to take her into his world and not let anyone see her. Take her for himself. No, that was his to begin with. He wasn't taking it for himself, it was what he had. Whether it was tyrannical or autocratic. Since he was here, there was no chance to leave. Unless he died. Big Ice Cube, what are you thinking about? The sound of cheering pulled him back from his daze. Xiao Su looked at the little fellow who wasn't even as tall as his chest. She was standing under the plum blossom tree. Her red lips and white teeth made him feel as if he was looking at his past self. What did the 10-year-old him have? Loneliness, disappointment, pain, frustration. He would never allow her to experience everything that he had. There might not be any ribs that you like to eat tonight, he said calmly. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips into a smile. Big Ice Cube was really cute. It's fine, I can eat something else, as long as you don't make me eat carrots. She bargained. No way. Humph. Autocratic, tyrannical. She made a face at him. Unfortunately, that person ignored her. Chapter 419. Can't you say something? She muttered for a while, not wanting to eat carrots anymore. She thought that she wouldn't be able to buy carrots in such a cold place like Jiang country. But who would have thought that Hualing and the others would specially bring carrots from another place? Only after asking did she know that it was Big Ice Cube. Why would Big Ice Cube like carrots? But if he didn't eat them, she would be the one suffering. Xiao Su softly patted her head and said with a smile, Because you haven't grown up yet. What did he mean by haven't grown up? In the modern era, He had never heard of people desperately eating carrots to grow up. I don't want to eat carrots. I don't want to become a rabbit, Chu Qingyan said with a sad face. Xiao Su curled his lips. In his eyes, she was just a rabbit that hadn't grown up yet. At the table, seeing her unworried face and obediently eating carrots, Xiao Su remembered the first time she was poisoned. Master, Miss Chu's body doesn't seem to be very good. Ethereal checked her pulse before standing in front of him and saying this. What do you mean? He asked. This subordinate found that Chu Qingyan's eyes are not very clear at night, so it should have been brought out from her mother's womb. Is there any way to treat it? There isn't one right now, but this subordinate will do his best to research a way. After a while. Master, this subordinate has found a way to treat Miss Chu's eyes. Tell me about it. As long as Miss Chu eats carrots for 5 years, she will be cured. If her condition is discovered early, she will be cured early. Good, from today onwards, have the kitchen prepare carrots for every meal. Also, don't tell a third person about this. In other words, don't let her know. She was still young and might be scared. So 5 years later, when she was of marriageable age, the dishes she ate from carrots could be compiled into a thick encyclopedia of carrots. Stir-fried carrots, stir-fried bacon with carrots, stewed pork ribs with carrots, salted carrots with rice. When she complained while eating carrots, she didn't know that she was actually using food therapy. She also didn't know that the ancient people had discovered night blindness so early and how to treat it. It could only be said that the ancient people's wisdom was truly amazing. Chu Qingyan, who didn't want to turn into a rabbit, suddenly covered her face after eating. It hurt so much that she almost rolled on the ground. Big ice cube, my teeth hurt. Chu Qingyan's eyes as she looked at him with teary eyes. Calm teeth ache wasn't an illness, but it hurt her to die. Chu Qingyan's small face was contorted. It was obvious that she was at her limit. Xiao Su's face turned cold. Send a message. When Huo Ling saw this scene, he immediately went down to call Kong Ling over. Cheng Yenluo, who had heard about the incident in the courtyard, also came over. Chu's halves have it, it was a false alarm. Everyone retreated. Those who needed to brew medicine, those who needed to eat, and those who needed to patrol went on patrol. It was a small matter, but depending on who it happened to, it could be a big or small matter. Before the medicine was ready, Chu Qingyan was still in so much pain that she wanted to roll on the ground. In the modern era, she often went to the hospital because of tooth decay. She didn't want to experience this kind of heart-wrenching pain again. In ancient times, she had protected her teeth very well. She didn't expect that it would hurt like this even without tooth decay. Big ice cube, my teeth hurt. Other than this, she didn't know what else to say. It hurt so much that she was delirious. Xiao Su looked at her hand covering half of her face. Her eyes were watery, and he felt pity for her. He pulled her into his arms and patted her back without saying a word. He wasn't good at comforting people. He could only let her come closer to him instinctively. Chu Qingyan leaned on his shoulder, looking pitiful and aggrieved. This kind of pain was indescribable. Big ice cube, why don't you knock me out? Maybe I won't feel the pain after I fall asleep. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She looked at him with tears in her eyes and disgust with him. Xiao Su didn't know whether to laugh or cry at her words. However, he could feel that she was really in pain. Bear with it a little longer. The medicine will be here soon. He caressed her back and added, if you really can't take it anymore, bite my shoulder. Perhaps it was really painful. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt a pressure on his shoulder. Then there was a slight pain in his. He scoffed. It seemed that his little fellow was not only a rabbit, but also a dog. If Chu Qingyan knew what he was thinking, she would probably retort that even a rabbit would bite when cornered. When Xining came over with the medicine and saw her master's evil deeds, she was so scared that she almost spilled the medicine. After drinking the medicine, Chu Qingyan's toothache temporarily subsided by 50% or 60%. For the first time, Chu Qingyan felt that the medicine tasted so good. Xiao Su looked at the person sitting quietly on the chair and asked worriedly, "Does it still hurt?" Chu Qingyan covered half of her face and looked up. She nodded at him. "It still hurts. It hurts so much. Bear with it. If every soldier on the battlefield was injured like you, there wouldn't be any need to fight. Xiao Su teased her, trying to distract her. The more she paid attention to the pain, the more the pain would be magnified. I'm not a soldier. Besides, I'm a girl. I have the right to cry out in pain. Chu Qingyan, who was on the verge of weakness, revealed a rare girlish side of her. Xiao Su shook his head, finding it funny. Perhaps it was because she was chatting with the big ice cube that she didn't feel so painful. Her gaze inadvertently landed on his shoulder, where the saliva had soaked it. Her cheeks heated up and she felt a little embarrassed. Big ice cube, does your shoulder hurt? Xiao Su said unconcernedly, it's nothing. Chu Qingyan thought that he was right. As a man, this bit of pain was nothing. However, after a long time, when the two of them were naked and she saw the clear teeth mark on his shoulder, she realized how hard she had bitten him back then. Are you feeling guilty? Then shouldn't this prince ask for compensation for the teeth mark? Chu Qingyan, who was immersed in the fact that she had left a mark on his body all those years ago, did not notice that a certain person had turned into a wolf. Then he suddenly flipped her over and ate her clean. When Chu Qingyan woke up the next day, she saw that her body was covered in ambiguous marks. On the same spot on her shoulder, there was also a fresh teeth mark. She wanted to cry on the spot. She had to pay for what she did. Perhaps it was because of this toothache. After recovering from her illness for a few days, Chu Qingyan told Xiao Su that she wanted to go out to play. Xiao Su generously let her go again. 2 days were up. She pulled Du Guqing, who was acting as her cover, and Jin Xian, who was accompanying her to protect her, towards the place where she had agreed to meet with Higashio Motetsu. Chapter 420. When they arrived at the agreed place, Higashio Motetsu was already there. Chu Qingyan didn't stay any longer. She asked Jin Xian to stay by Du Guqing's side to ensure that she would return safely before leaving with Higashio Motetsu. Little rascal, aren't you worried that your master will be abducted and sold? Du Guqing looked at the direction where the two people disappeared and asked. As a subordinate, I will obey my master's orders. Moreover, my master is very smart. Only she can abduct others, no one can abduct her. Jin Xian said methodically. Du Guqing chuckled and said, foolish loyalty. But as soon as her words fell, Jin Xian turned around and left. Du Guqing touched her nose. Was this little rascal so fragile? Hey, little rascal, sister is just joking with you. Don't take it seriously. Du Guqing immediately followed. Jin Xian looked back at her expressionlessly. This one is going to help my master buy some pastries. Also, this one has a name, Jin Xian, not a little rascal. But this little rascal is really cold. Du Guqing heard that the last time she brought Chu Qingyan back, Chu Qingyan was punished by Xiao Su. At that time, she was puzzled in her heart. This Xiao Su was simply treating Chu Qingyan as his own possession. But such a cold guy, only Chu Qingyan could stand it. If it was her, she would have already hung herself with noodles. So this time, Jin Xian listened to his master's order and bought the pastries first, so that he could report back and not be seen through by Xiao Su. The two people on this side were going to the pastry shop, while the two people on the other side were already far away. Dongting, what are we doing here? When Higashio Motetsu brought her to a restaurant, Chu Qingyan was puzzled. This young master and they agreed to meet here. Later, they will inform you where the meeting place is. Don't worry, accompany this young master to drink a bowl of tofu pudding. The tofu pudding here is very good. Higashio Motetsu said and didn't care about her expression and directly walked in. Chu Qingyan heard the shouts coming from inside as she watched the figure walk in. She had no choice but to follow him in. She thought that with Higashio Motetsu's temperament, he would choose a private room. But she didn't expect that he had already sat down in the lobby and saw her come in and waved his hand at her. Chu Qingyan face-bombed. With such a devilishly handsome face, it would be bad if he came out to scare people instead of staying at home. She would rather he go to the private room than face so many hot. I found that you are a gathering place for gossip. After Chu Qingyan sat down, she shook her head at him. Wherever he was, there would be infatuated women and whispering behind his back. When Higashio Motetsu heard this, he raised his phoenix eyes and looked around. Those women who were originally staring at him saw him look over and immediately lowered their heads. Some of the bolder ones even threw him a coquettish glance. Higashio Motetsu turned his gaze back to Chu Qingyan in front of him and smiled contentedly. "Little girl, can I take it that you are praising me?" Chu Qingyan glanced at the person who took advantage of her and wanted to ignore him. Not knowing how long they would have to wait, Chu Qingyan simply observed the people in the restaurant. Because it was not meal time, there were not many people eating. So in the large hall, there were only a few tables. There were passers-by who were in a hurry to eat and were preparing to leave. There were also people who were chatting with friends in groups of 3 to 5. There were also people who were wearing bamboo hats and eating leisurely. There was also an elegant man who was drinking alone. Chu Qingyan's gaze fell on the elegant man. His hair was as soft as the spring breeze in February and his eyebrows were drawn with strokes. His eyes were bright and he was wearing a sapphire blue brocade robe. His movements were elegant, but he did not stop drinking. It was as if he was drinking tea instead of wine. Just as she was seriously looking at him, a pair of claws flashed in front of her eyes. Chu Qingyan withdrew her gaze and stared at Higashio Motetsu, but he was the one who complained first. "Little girl, why are you looking at others? Could it be that other people can compare to this young master's looks?" Higashio Motetsu held his heart and looked like a resentful wife, as if his husband had been seduced by some other ghost. Chu Qingyan shook off the goosebumps all over her body. She was both amused and angry as she said, "Dong, can you not say such disgusting words? You're a dignified 9 feet tall man, okay? Show the courage that a man should have, okay? Don't be so narrow-minded, okay? TSK, you don't understand this young master's humor." Higashio Motetsu lamented in a lonely manner. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. "Pretend, pretend, keep pretending." As if responding to Chu Qingyan's inner thoughts, Higashio Motetsu's expression returned to normal. He looked at the person that Chu Qingyan was sizing up with a smile. "You have good eyesight. Do you know who he is?" From his tone, that person did not seem to be a simple person. She asked, "Who is it?" "Beg me." Higashio Motetsu repeated his old trick with a sly smile. Chu Qingyan felt that his method of keeping her in suspense was a disease that needed to be cured. Say it or not. Chu Qingyan did not want to waste time with him. Higashio Motetsu felt that this little girl was getting harder and harder to tease. He smiled faintly. "Do you still remember the matter of the Jiang Kingdom's princess breaking off the engagement? That person happened to be one of the parties involved." Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up in surprise. She looked at Higashio Motetsu in surprise, then looked at the man who was still drinking alone. She said in disbelief, "He's that second young master Tang?" "That's right. He's the second young master of the Tang family, Tang Qingshi." Higashio Motetsu nodded. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Qingyan could not help but click her tongue. This second young master Tang is handsome and well-dressed. Why would the third princess give up such a good tree? This was the first time he heard her praise someone. Higashio Motetsu was a little jealous. Wasn't he more handsome than Tang Qingchang? Why didn't the little girl praise him? But when he heard the little girl's next words, Higashio Motetsu almost choked on his own saliva. Could it be that such an excellent seedling doesn't love a beautiful woman but loves a homosexual? So the third princess resolutely broke off the engagement on the day of the wedding when she found out about it? If you put it that way, it makes sense. Chu Qingyan's imagination was running wild at the side, and she did not notice that the people around her were shocked by her shocking words. As if sensing Chu Qingyan's strange gaze, Tang Qingchang paused in the middle of pouring the wine and turned to look at her. His eyes were very clear. She could tell that he was an upright person. This was Chu Qingyan's first impression of him when she looked directly at him. Tang Qingchang only saw a boy in his early teens looking at him with an inquisitive look. He thought that this was another person who was curious about the broken engagement. Over the past year, he had become accustomed to such gazes. The wine in his mouth was tasteless. He put down the wine jug. His head was a little dizzy. He put the money on the table and got up to leave. Drowning his sorrows in wine made him even more sorrowful. Little girl, he's here. Who's here? Chapter 421. The messenger is here. Higashio Motetsu's voice had a hint of seriousness. Before Chu Qingyan could react, she saw him put the bowl of tofu pudding on the table. There were a few words written at the bottom of the bowl. East Dragon Pavilion in the western suburbs. This is... Chu Qingyan furrowed her brows. At this time, Higashio Motetsu had already pulled her up and said without hesitation, "We only have less than an hour, we have to hurry." She didn't know if he meant to hurry or if he wanted her to hold onto his hand. This was not the time to care about small details. After the two left, the waiter who called them came forward to clean up the table. They really are two handsome young masters. The waiter was about to reach for the bowl, but before he could touch it, the bowl instantly shattered into powder. The two didn't stop for a second and headed straight to the western suburbs. Chu Qingyan didn't know the way, but that didn't mean that Higashio Motetsu, who had been wandering around the capital for many days, didn't know the way. The two arrived at the East Dragon Pavilion in the western suburbs within the set time. When they were not far from the pavilion, Higashio Motetsu unexpectedly stopped. "What's wrong?" Chu Qingyan already saw the pavilion, but she didn't know what Higashio Motetsu was thinking. "You've decided? You really want to go?" Higashio Motetsu looked at her seriously. "We're only one step away, what are you waiting for?" She was not used to his sudden seriousness. She glanced at him and joked with Chu Qingyan. "It's not as simple as you think. You've decided to go?" Higashio Motetsu saw that she was in a good mood and smiled, but he still couldn't help but ask. It wasn't his first time going to the Lawn Manor, but he was a bit worried because of the news he received last night. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. "I, Chu Qingyan, am not the type of person to cower." Chu Qingyan patted her chest as if she was the only one who could do it. Just as she finished speaking, she looked suspiciously at Dongting Wangyu and said, "I say, Dong, could it be that you are scared after coming here? If you don't want to go, give me the invitation. I can go alone." This little girl actually dared to look down on him? Higashio Motetsu snorted coldly. If it wasn't for her safety, he wouldn't have cared so much. What a joke. Am I, Higashio Motetsu, that kind of person? Let's go, it's almost time. Higashio Motetsu strode forward, no longer wasting time with her. Chu Qingyan shrugged and quickly followed him. There's no one here. The two of them stood in the pavilion, but there was no one around. On such a cold day, if they weren't passers-by, few people would deliberately come out. As soon as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she heard the sound of clothes fluttering and carriage wheels rolling. She turned her head and saw several men dressed as servants driving a carriage towards them. Dare I ask what the word wind corresponds to? The leader asked in a clear voice. Eat, drink, and be merry. Higashio Motetsu replied without hesitation. Chu Qingyan stood to the side and listened to the two people asking and answering questions. It turned out that this was the secret signal. Hearing these 8 words, it covered the various meanings of this transaction. Congratulations, you've answered correctly. Please cover your eyes. The leader waved his hand and 2 men walked towards them with black ribbons. Chu Qingyan asked Higashio Motetsu with her eyes. Higashio Motetsu was blindfolded and slowly said, "In order to guarantee the transaction, no one knows where we are going." At this time, her eyes were also covered. The texture of the ribbons on her face was very comfortable. If she was not mistaken, these were rare silk ribbons. They were very generous. But after sighing, Chu Qingyan felt a trace of nervousness, or it could be said that she was looking forward to it. Being helped into the carriage, Chu Qingyan and Higashio Motetsu just sat down when the carriage began to move. The blindfolded 2 people did not know where they were being taken to. The 2 of them were silent. After the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the carriage finally stopped. The 2 people were also asked to come down, but the ribbons on their faces could not be removed. They were supported for a while. When they came down from the carriage, Chu Qingyan felt a bone-piercing cold wind blowing against her face. But before she could take 2 steps, she was surrounded by warmth. The surroundings were quiet. Besides the sound of their footsteps, she could not hear any other sound. "We've arrived." The leader's voice sounded. Chu Qingyan consciously took off her ribbons. Suddenly, there was a burst of light. Her eyes could not accept such a strong light. Chu Qingyan could not help but close her eyes, waiting for her eyes to adjust before she dared to open them. She saw that she was in a room. The decorations on all sides were not ordinary. Candles flickered. Because the room was not big, it was very bright. The surroundings were very quiet, as if this was really just a room for people to rest. It had nothing to do with the mysterious transaction. She turned sideways and saw Higashio Motetsu sitting in the room. "This is the underground lawn manor? Are we going out?" Saying that, she walked towards the door. "Right now is not the time for the transaction. You can't leave." As soon as Higashio Motetsu's words fell, Chu Qingyan placed her hand on the door. She gently pulled, but it did not budge. It was just as Higashio Motetsu said. There really was no way out of this room. The people who came to participate are not worried that if Lawn Manor wants to harm them, they will be like fish on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Chu Qingyan turned around and asked with a puzzled expression, "You're thinking too much." Since Lawn Manor can do such a big thing and attract so many famous people, there must be something special about it. They are honest and trustworthy. They protect the privacy of every participant. That is what they do best. Higashio Motetsu looked at her with a chuckle. Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose. From his tone, it seemed like she had asked a very stupid question. But at this time, she saw Higashio Motetsu holding a piece of paper in his hand. She couldn't help but move closer. "What is this?" "A list left behind by Lawn Manor's people. It records the items that are going to be traded today. You can decide where you want to go based on the items on the list." Higashio Motetsu handed the paper in his hand to her. "You can decide where you want to go later." Here in Lawn Manor, there were many rooms. Every room had a sign hanging on it. The people inside were all people who were going to be trading. As long as they were looking for something, they could directly talk to the owner of the room and discuss it. It had to be said that this method was simple and fast. It prevented them from finding a needle in a haystack and missing the item they wanted to trade. When Chu Qingyan's gaze fell on the voluminous black and white words on the paper, she was completely dumbfounded. There were actually no less than 100 rooms. If you thought that there was only one owner in each room, you were wrong. Lawn Manor's planning was based on the similarities and differences of the items being traded. For example, in this armory, there were no less than a dozen owners, each holding different weapons that they wanted to trade. Higashio Motetsu looked at her seriously, choosing, and didn't rush her. "I've chosen." Chu Qingyan suddenly opened her mouth. Higashio Motetsu raised his eyebrows and looked at her. The people who participated in Lawn Manor could only enter 3 rooms at a time. In other words, there were only 3 chances. He was very doubtful that this little girl would be able to choose the right room. Chapter 422. At this time, Higashio Motetsu was also a little curious as to which 3 rooms she would choose. He saw her holding a vermilion pen and circling the words on the paper. Amusing, a basket of medicinal herbs. When Higashio Motetsu saw these 2 names, he couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. This Lan Zhuang's naming skills were becoming more and more out of tune. But when his line of sight moved to the 2 rooms, he couldn't help but smile. This little girl's intelligence couldn't be underestimated. What about the other one? When Higashio Motetsu saw that there was no movement after circling 2 rooms, he couldn't help but ask. Chu Qingyan put down the pen and blinked her eyes. "There are only 3 chances, how can I use them all at once? It's better to be prepared." She was a person who always prepared a perfect plan. She couldn't guarantee that she would be able to get what she wanted in these 2 rooms, but if she did, then wouldn't she have wasted the 3rd room? If there was no result in the 2 rooms, then she could make adjustments according to the situation. Chu Qingyan's wit made Higashio Motetsu have a whole new level of respect for her. "If it wasn't for the fact that you don't know how to shrink bones, I would have thought that the one standing in front of me wasn't a 10-year-old. Then you should treat me like a 10-year-old child. I'm very fragile." Chu Qingyan blinked her eyes at him, deliberately showing an innocent and toothless appearance. Higashio Motetsu chuckled, "Pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, I think you're the best at this." Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and graciously accepted the compliment. "That's right, what did you bring?" He didn't have time to properly ask her before, but now that he had some free time while waiting, he planned to ask her. Seeing Higashio Motetsu's eyes fall on the small bag on her back, Chu Qingyan tightened her grip on it. She did not intend to reveal it. I can't tell you about it. You will see it later. Keep it a little mysterious. The way the little girl protected her treasure made him even more curious, but he wasn't the kind of person who liked to force others. Moreover, as long as there was a trade, he would know what she brought sooner or later. Little girl, let me make it clear to you first. The things that can be traded here are all extraordinary things. Even if you find what you want to trade, if you don't have something of equivalent value to trade, you can only stand aside and watch. Don't worry, I won't return empty-handed, Chu Qingyan said confidently. Chu Qingyan naturally understood Higashio Motetsu's reminder, but since she dared to come, it proved that she was fully prepared. Hearing her say so, Higashio Motetsu did not say anything more. And it was almost time, because Chu Qingyan heard footsteps approaching. Sure enough, the door was opened, and two tall and powerful men in black wearing ghost masks walked in. One of them took away the paper on the table, and after confirming with Chu Qingyan, he gave them 3 small plaques. On the plaques were written, "Funny, basket of herbs," and a blank plaque. The other person gave them 2 masks in his hand, indicating that they should wear them. Higashio Motetsu put on the mask and explained to her, in order to protect the interests and privacy of the guests, both sides of the trade don't know what the other side looks like. This is also the reason why Lan Zhuang has been able to exist for so long. Chu Qingyan nodded and also put on the mask. Although wearing the mask only revealed a pair of eyes, she still felt a little uncomfortable. However, this discomfort was temporary, and she could accept it. It's almost time, let this servant bring the 2 of you to the trading hall. One of the 2 men in black withdrew, and the other stood at the door to guide the 2 of them. Chu Qingyan and Higashio Motetsu followed the men in black out the door. As soon as they went out, Chu Qingyan saw that there were also rooms on the left and right sides of her room. When she came out, there were also many people wearing masks coming out of the rooms. These people looked straight ahead and did not care who walked past them. They followed the men in black without distraction. This corridor was very long, and there were rooms on both sides. Chu Qingyan estimated that there were at least 100 rooms, but she did not know if there were any other rooms other than here. Chu Qingyan finally understood why the guests were allowed to choose the rooms they wanted to go to in advance. It was mainly to distribute them. Among these people, some were dressed luxuriously and had elegant manners, some were dressed ordinarily and had extraordinary temperaments, some had long sabers at their waists, and some were thin and weak, as if they were harmless. According to Higashio Motetsu, to be able to participate in the trade, they had to be able to pay at least 5,000 taels of silver, or they had to be famous and skilled in a particular field to be valued by Lan Zhuang's pavilion master, who made an exception to let them in. Why are there so many people? Chu Qingyan asked in a low voice. Higashio Motetsu replied in a low voice. These people are not only from Jiang country, but also from all over the world. Every trade at Lan Zhuang attracts people from all over the world, and the items for each trade are basically different. Some people do not find what they want this time, so they will participate in the next trade. And this time, it is the grandest trade in the past 3 years. In the past, there were at most 50 rooms for each trade, but this time, the number has doubled, and the number of people participating has increased a lot from the previous 100. Higashio Motetsu only said a few points, but Chu Qingyan understood. No wonder these people were dressed in all kinds of clothes, it was because they came from different places. She unconsciously narrowed her eyes. It seemed that this was really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Whether they could find the ice crystal flower or not, they would have to depend on this. Chu Qingyan remained silent, and did not speak again. Higashio Motetsu only glanced at her, and also silently followed the black-clothed man's lead. At the end of the corridor, there was a dazzling white light. Chu Qingyan thought that this should be the trading hall. After walking into the white light, she opened her eyes. There were at least 300 to 400 people in the bustling crowd. Those black-clothed men who led the way did not go forward, but spontaneously walked to various places in the hall, and began to monitor and guard. Chu Qingyan looked around. It could be said that there was a guard every 5 steps, and these guards were tall and strong. Their steps were steady, and it could be seen that they were all experts. With such tight security, there was no need to be afraid of people plotting against them. In front of the trading hall, there were several signboards. Chu Qingyan and Higashio Motetsu went forward to take a look. On the signboards were the directions to each room. Chu Qingyan felt a sense of familiarity. Weren't these the directions to the scenic spots when they went out for a trip? The idea of the person who designed these directions was really advanced. Chu Qingyan did not think too much about it, and found 2 rooms with baskets of medicinal herbs. Then, she and Higashio Motetsu went to the nearest room with baskets of medicinal herbs. Before they reached the door, they saw that the room was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue, and could not help but raise her head to look at the signboard. She wanted to double-check if there were baskets of medicinal herbs. But in her ear, she heard Higashio Motetsu say, "This medicinal herb trading room is the most popular place for Lan Zhuang's transactions." Hearing that, Chu Qingyan immediately pulled Higashio Motetsu and squeezed in. "We can't fall behind. What if someone else beat them to it?" Only to hear Higashio Motetsu scream, "Little girl, take it easy, my image ah." Chapter 423. The basket of herbs in his hand had already been handed over to the black-clothed man at the side. Chu Qingyan pulled Higashio Motetsu and squeezed into the room. Higashio Motetsu complained incessantly. His good clothes had been squeezed until they were crooked. Unfortunately, the person pulling his wrist seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. She didn't slow down for a moment as she walked towards the first table. He raised his hand and took advantage of the time to straighten his clothes. In this crowded place, he suddenly felt the softness of his wrist. He lowered his head to look at that small hand. It had a girl's slender and tender hand. At this time, she was afraid that the 2 of them would get lost, so she tightly held on to him. Higashio Motetsu's gaze followed her hand up little by little. Today, she was wearing a man's white robe with blue patterns. Although her facial features were covered by a mask, he could still feel her petite and delicate vitality. She was still young and he couldn't see what she would look like when she grew up. But he had a premonition that she would definitely not be mediocre. At this time, the little girl didn't notice his undisguised gaze. Her heart was completely focused on the stall owners. Higashio Motetsu was a little jealous. He didn't know what this Xiao Su had done to be able to obtain her heartfelt support. His phoenix eyes slightly narrowed. A dark light flashed in his eyes and quickly disappeared into the depths of his eyes. Chu Qingyan at this time began a carpet search. Every time she walked past a table, her eyes would glance at the table. Very quickly, she had skipped over many tables. The reason why baskets of herbs were so popular was because people's bodies would always have illnesses. Moreover, the more power one had in their hands, the higher the chance of being harmed. Thus, there would be more people looking for rare herbs. This is the most chaotic transaction I have ever seen. Higashio Motetsu sighed. He felt that this kind of crowded environment was not suitable for a noble person like him. The more people there were, the more transactions there were. Arguments over the same medicinal herbs could be found everywhere. Here, there was no distinction between high and low. There was only a competition to see who was faster, more accurate, and more ruthless. It was Chu Qingyan's first time participating in this kind of transaction. She completely regarded it as a flea market. Moreover, she was used to going shopping in the mall with her friends during the holidays. Wherever there was a discount, she would go there. She had completely adapted to this transaction model, so she didn't have as many exclamations as Higashio Motetsu. Most of the tables he had browsed earlier were filled with pills that could increase one's inner strength or treat various ailments. Although they were quite rare, they were nothing compared to the pills developed by Ethereal and Qingyan Luo. As expected, one's outlook would change depending on the people around them. Therefore, the quality of one's friends would determine one's level of advancement. In half an hour, they had browsed through 1/3 of the large room. Chu Qingyan finally stopped to rest for a while. There were so many people. Even if it was winter, the rising carbon dioxide would still raise the temperature. Higashio Motetsu felt her hand loosen and moved away. He felt an inexplicable sense of loss in his heart, but he didn't pay too much attention to it. Instead, he looked around. At this time, most of the people had already left. The door, which had been bustling with activity earlier, was now empty. There were dozens of tables in this room. The little girl had spent half an hour looking for nearly 20 tables. She didn't just look around in a hurry. He could see that her gaze was very sharp. She had thought carefully before leaving. He felt that she was the only one at her age who could be as steady and intelligent as her. Dong Ting here. She took a deep breath and took out 2 water bags from the bag on her back. She handed one to him and drank the other one alone. Then, she wiped her lips and said, "Continue." Higashio Motetsu didn't expect that she would actually bring her own water. He felt a little incredulous. That was because he didn't know Chu Qingyan well. She remembered that one year when she went shopping with her best friend on National Day, they each brought 2 bottles of water. It was very tiring to crazily buy water. If they didn't replenish their energy, how could they compete with those uncles and aunties who often square danced? There weren't many people left. Chu Qingyan minded her own business and walked to the next table. Higashio Motetsu looked at her back and then looked at the water bag in his hand. He hesitated for a moment, then unscrewed the cork and took a sip. It was a little sour and sweet, like the juice of fruits. Not only could it quench his thirst, but it could also satisfy his hunger. He had to admit that the little girl was very thoughtful. Chu Qingyan walked in front of a table and saw a 100-year snow lotus planted in a transparent ice cube. Each petal was sparkling and translucent, and a white fog was rising around it. It was as if one could see a snowy mountain sealed in ice and covered in snow. It was very ethereal. Chu Qingyan was attracted by it. She heard from Yen Luo that the 1,000-year-old snow lotus was rare in the world. Even the 100-year-old snow lotus was rare. Now that she saw it, Chu Qingyan felt that the snow lotus not only had good medicinal effects, but also had high aesthetic value. "Hello, I want to ask if you have ice crystal flower or love grass?" Since this person had such a precious 100-year-old snow lotus, she didn't know if he had the 2 things she needed. The stall owner saw that she was a little surprised by the snow lotus, but didn't come for it. His tone was a little rude. Ice crystal flower and love grass only exist in medical books. Almost no one has seen them. What's more, love grass lives in the morning and dies in the evening. It's impossible for it to appear here. You'd better not waste your time. Higashio Motetsu heard this and guessed that the little girl was going to be angry. She cared about these 2 herbs so much. How could she allow others to say that? He crossed his arms and waited for a good show. Chu Qingyan heard the man's tone and felt unhappy. No one wanted to be dampened by others. She didn't hurry to leave. She looked at the stall owner secretly. Her eyes swept over the broken finger on his right hand. Then she looked away and asked, "May I ask what you want to exchange this snow lotus for?" The snow lotus was so precious, it should have been traded away a long time ago. Unfortunately, his snow lotus was still there, and the people standing next to it were all afraid of it. Then there was only one possibility: the thing he wanted to trade was equally precious. The stall owner replied stiffly, "Dream flower." Dream flower? This information suddenly popped up in Chu Qingyan's mind. Dream flower could cause people to hallucinate and let the consumer die in a beautiful dream. One type was used for murder, causing people to die unknowingly. The other type was used for people who were suffering so much that they could spend their last days in pain and sorrow. "What are you doing it for?" Chu Qingyan asked without thinking. The stall owner was a little impatient with other people's questions, but when he met her bright and inexplicably dignified eyes, he was slightly taken aback. His fingers curled and he said in a low voice, "For my wife." Chu Qingyan smiled. "I'm afraid you won't find the dream flower here, but there might be a surprise in Kuan Mountain." With that, Chu Qingyan prepared to leave. The stall owner's eyes lit up. His hands trembled slightly. He looked down at the snow lotus and said, "Wait." Chapter 424. With her back facing the stall owner, Chu Qingyan curled her lips mysteriously. Then, she turned around and resumed her innocent and harmless expression. "What's the matter?" she asked naturally. "I don't know about the ice crystal flower, but I know about the love grass," the stall owner said stiffly. The stall owner's words stunned Higashio Motetsu, who was watching from the side. He narrowed his eyes. "How did this little girl do it? I'd like to hear the details." Chu Qingyan suppressed the excitement in her heart and tried to make her voice sound normal. The stall owner nodded and said, 20 years ago, I once had the seed of the love grass in my hands, but I couldn't grow it. Later on, by chance, I gave it to a highly respected doctor in Shang country. However, I heard that he has already passed away. I don't know what happened after that." "Who is that doctor?" Chu Qingyan stepped forward and asked. "It's not convenient for me to reveal that. If you have the heart, you will naturally be able to find him," the stall owner replied. Chu Qingyan remembered the rules of this lawn manor. The two parties involved in the transaction could not reveal their identities. Otherwise, they would be punished for violating the rules. "No matter what, thank you." She suppressed her surprise and excitement and thanked him sincerely. "I should be the one thanking you." The stall owner did not talk much with her. Instead, he carried Xuelyan and turned to leave. Chu Qingyan looked at his back view as he left in a hurry. She felt a little emotional. Another infatuated person. Witnessing this dramatic turn of events, Higashio Motetsu walked up and asked, "How did you know about the dream flower's whereabouts? And how did you know that he knew about the love grass?" Chu Qingyan knew that he would ask this question. She did not hide it and whispered to him in a voice that both of them could hear. "I've heard a friend mention the dream flower before. She's also a healer. She mentioned the dream flower because there's a 100 herbs mountain lord with superb medical skills in the pugilistic world. For the past 2 years, he's been searching for the dream flower all over the world to alleviate his wife's pain. He had heard of this 100 herb mountain lord before, but he did not know that he was looking for the dreamy flower. However, after hearing her words and the stall owner's answer, he was certain that Chu Qingyan had mistaken him for the 100 herb mountain lord. Higashio Motetsu asked in a rare moment of confusion, "Then how can you be sure that he is the 100 herb mountain lord?" "His right pinky finger was amputated when he was young. Just now, I saw that the stall owner's pinky finger was also amputated. Plus, we don't know each other, so there's no need for him to hide it from me. So, I'm very sure that he's the 100 herb mountain lord," Chu Qingyan said confidently. Higashio Motetsu stopped smiling and stared at the person in front of him. At such a young age, she was already observant and could deduce the entire matter from a small point. If it was anyone else, they would not be as smart and quick-witted as her. "Congratulations, you've obtained a clue." Furthermore, he had obtained it effortlessly. This made him somewhat convinced. "Thank you." Chu Qingyan was beaming with joy. She did not expect to achieve victory so quickly. Although she did not know who the doctor from the Shang nation was, and she did not know if the seed was still there, it was better than having no clue at all. At least she knew where the love grass seed was last seen, and she could provide the Xiao cavalry with some useful information. Compared to Chu Qingyan's joy, Higashio Motetsu was very calm. Although she got a clue about the love grass, Chu Qingyan did not let go of the next table. She would rather kill 3,000 by mistake than let go of one. Just as Chu Qingyan walked to a table, someone happened to be trading. Chu Qingyan's mood was a lot better at this time, and she had the leisure to look at what the other party was trading. A man dressed in black took the snow mussel pill and looked at it, and then returned it to the stall owner. He then opened the box on his body. It was a Chinese knotweed. Looking at the color, it should be many years old. At this time, the stall owner said something to the black-masked man standing beside him. The black-masked man then led the two people to the door. In the blue equipment, private transactions were not allowed. Once both sides confirmed the transaction, they had to go to the notary office to hand over the things to the people of Lawn Manor. When the transaction was over, they could take their things. Moreover, those who did not need to trade would be led to a room by the people of Lawn Manor to rest until the transaction was over. This was also to ensure that those who succeeded in the transaction would not turn around halfway and destroy the bridge after crossing the river, affecting the progress of the transaction. Chu Qingyan could not help but admire the meticulousness of the people of Lawn Manor who set up these mechanisms. No wonder so many people came alone without worry. However, when the black-clothed man brushed past her, their gazes met in midair. She felt that the man suddenly narrowed his eyes and took a deep look at her before leaving with the people from Lawn Manor. Chu Qingyan's heart thumped. When she looked at the black-masked man again, he only left her with his back. When she noticed his clothes, Chu Qingyan seemed to have something flashed in her mind, but it disappeared quickly. She did not catch on to anything. She felt inexplicably uneasy, but she couldn't tell why. Subconsciously, she remembered the things he had just exchanged. When she went back, she would ask Yen Luo what they were for. Just as Chu Qingyan was lost in thought, Higashio Motetsu said impatiently, "You're so mesmerized by a shameless man. You're too useless." Chu Qingyan couldn't help but roll her eyes. What was he talking about? Chu Qingyan put this matter aside for the time being and turned to the other tables. The medicinal herbs here were placed all over the room as if they were free. Any one of them was priceless. They were all rare and precious herbs that were hard to buy with money. Chu Qingyan felt that she was lucky to be able to see so many medicinal herbs at the same time in her life. Unfortunately, after asking around, no one knew about the ice crystal flower or the love grass. Chu Qingyan was a little disappointed. However, these two herbs were really rare and it wasn't easy to find out their whereabouts. Thus, she left with Xiao Su and headed to the amusing room. Chu Qingyan secretly prayed that she would be able to find out the whereabouts of the ice crystal flower on this trip. When they arrived at the entrance of the amusing room, Chu Qingyan calmly handed the small token in her hand to the masked man at the door. Then she led Higashio Motetsu to the stall owner that she had already identified. Due to her strong sense of purpose, she quickly found the table. However, the table was already surrounded by people. Chu Qingyan wasn't in a hurry. She pulled the reluctant Higashio Motetsu and squeezed through the crowd again. Higashio Motetsu wailed for the second time today, and also for the second time in his life. Oh, his image! Every time, it was so unexpected. Couldn't they have told him in advance? Chapter 425. When Chu Qingyan and Higashio Motetsu squeezed to the front, the stall owner at the table was talking to one of the masked people who wanted to trade. They could only hear their conversation. "Please look at what this one has brought." The slightly stooped trader wearing the Guan Yu mask slowly took out a box from his sleeve. Everyone's gaze fell on his box, waiting for him to slowly open it. The Guan Yu mask trader lived up to everyone's expectations and opened the box. Inside was a fist-sized golden peony flower. From the appearance, it looked like a woman's head ornament. Chu Qingyan looked at the golden peony flower and then looked at the card on the table. On it was written, "All-knowing scholar of Jianghu." Lan Zhuang did not allow stall owners and traders to reveal their true identities, but there was one exception. That was the famous all-knowing scholar of Jianghu. He was known as the #1 person in the world who knew everything from astronomy to geography. He was omniscient and omnipotent. This all-knowing scholar of Jianghu did not have an undeserved reputation. He had a group of subordinates who were skilled in the art of invisibility. They were scattered all over the world and weaved a dense intelligence network for him. Every day, they would provide him with the latest news. No matter which concubine the emperor favored last night, or which flower petal the concubine used to bathe today, he knew everything. The information in his hands ranged from the small fights between the large sects to the deep secrets of the nobles. Even though he did not have any power, he was enough to make people fear him. Because he had secrets that people did not want to know. He made people hate and fear him, but no one dared to make a move against him. He did not know martial arts, but he had 10 experts protecting him. Any one of them was a famous person in Jianghu that made people fear him. So before they made a move, they had to weigh their own weight and see if they could match up to even a finger of the other person. It was said that he was a rare handsome youth in Jianghu. When he appeared in Jianghu a few years ago, he attracted countless women to kneel at his feet. It was a pity that he was too arrogant and did not put them in his eyes. Fortunately, this all-knowing scholar of Jianghu had not involved himself in Jianghu for many years. It was said that he was henpecked and married a domineering beauty. Recently, he had been trying to please his wife and make babies. He did not care about worldly affairs. But these were all rumors and no one could prove it. Maybe it was those who were oppressed by him and were about to go crazy. They added oil and vinegar to make themselves feel better. So other than the occasional person who spent a lot of money to buy information from him, very few people saw him show his face. In the past few years, if they wanted to see him, it was Lan Zhuang. Maybe it was because he was bored, or maybe he thought he was omniscient. To answer. Of course, the people who came to ask questions with things in their hands were not ordinary people. Unfortunately, this all-knowing man in ganghood was not an ordinary person either. Almost no one could defeat him. Every time he came, he would come and leave proudly. When Chu Qingyan saw his name on the list, she was very excited. She did not know the all-knowing scholar of Jianghu, but she had heard of his name. It was a pity that he had not appeared in Jianghu for many years. Now that she could meet him, it was a blessing. However, seeing him did not mean that she could successfully ask him about the whereabouts of the ice crystal flower and the love grass. At this time, the customs agent had already opened the box. Isn't this an ordinary woman's headdress? Why do you even dare to take this out? One of the onlookers chuckled. Brother, you can't underestimate this thing. Maybe there's something mysterious about it. Another onlooker said. Chu Qingyan looked at the golden peony seriously. How could the person who appeared in this place take out something ordinary? I think it's very likely to be a hidden weapon. Chu Qingyan whispered to Higashio Motetsu. Higashio Motetsu glanced at the box and chuckled at her. Little girl, your eyesight is not bad. Chu Qingyan shrugged. After watching so many ancient martial arts dramas, she had seen this kind of hidden weapon most often. However, she was not good enough to know what it was used for. She wanted to hear what this all-knowing scholar of Jianghu had to say. The all-knowing scholar of Jianghu, who was wearing a fox mask, looked at it casually. In the quiet room, she heard him sneer. His gaze fell on the customs agent, and his voice was as charming as aged wine. How dare you show such a thing in front of me? Chu Qingyan was stunned. This voice sounded like pearls and jade falling on a plate. It was not low, nor was it extravagant. It carried a gentle breeze. Most importantly, he was very young, probably about the same age as Big Ice Cube. Chu Qingyan sighed. How could people still live? People of this age in the modern world were probably still ignorant. People in the ancient world were really precocious. Fortunately, she had transmigrated into Shi Sui's body. At least she had a higher starting point than others. The customs agent's veins bulged as he held the box. He snorted. All-knowing scholar of Jianghu, don't be too proud. Solve the problem. The all-knowing scholar of Jianghu didn't waste time talking nonsense with him. He didn't look at the box again. He slowly said, the twining branch hair is ranked third among the hidden weapons. There are 120 petals on it. Press the red dot in the stamen to activate a mechanism. When 100 petals are released, it can become a killing weapon. The petals contain love-severing poison. Even if the petals don't kill the target, the poison can still kill the target on the spot. When the all-knowing scholar of Jianghu said the name, the customs agent couldn't help but take a step back. His turbid eyes were filled with disbelief. Everyone knew that the all-knowing scholar of Jianghu was right. Hey, next one. The all-knowing scholar of Jianghu didn't ask whether the answer was correct or not. He leaned against the pillar behind him and waved his hand impatiently. All-knowing scholar of Jianghu, you can't do this. I beg you, tell me where he is. I want to take revenge on him. I'll send you the twining branch hair. Tell me. The customs agent couldn't accept the result. He lost control and knelt on the ground with a thud. He sincerely offered the box in his hand to the all-knowing scholar of Jianghu. You lost. The loser has no right to negotiate. Besides, the all-knowing sect has plenty of these hidden weapons. He picked his ear and said disdainfully. His wife played with these things all day long. He could pick one up wherever he went. It was better not to bring it back in case he didn't have a place to put it. Seeing the all-knowing scholar of Jianghu's indifference, the dealer stood up and wanted to use violence. However, he was stopped by the Blue Manor's men in black. They turned around and wanted to take him away. All-knowing scholar of Jianghu, you're cold and heartless. Be careful of retribution. The dealer roared angrily and was quickly taken away. Chu Qingyan happened to be standing at the edge. She inadvertently heard the clear voice talking to himself. She chuckled and said, "What is retribution? Can it be eaten?" Chapter 426. Chu Qingyan subconsciously looked at Bai Shaoxing. The mask covered his face, and the wide snow-colored cloak covered his entire body. She could not see his figure, and his attire covered him completely. Apart from his slender and beautiful hands, as well as his bottomless eyes, which were as clear as an ancient pond. From the feeling he gave off, Chu Qingyan felt that he was like an older brother next door. His voice made people feel comfortable, but when he spoke, he was nonchalant and had a heartless smile on his face. It was as if he was someone who was playing with everyone in the palm of his hand but did not care about them at all. A person like this, from afar, would make people feel close to him. However, once you really got close to him, you would be doomed. Just now, he was laughing and talking coldly to that trader. Chu Qingyan knew that such a person was not easy to get close to. At this time, a new trader came forward. "Bai Shaoxing, this is my new toy. Take a look." The trader was wearing a Luosha mask. He spoke with a rich and overbearing voice, unlike the previous trader who lacked qi. On the contrary, there was a bit of killing intent. As he spoke, he opened his hand. A blue crystal appeared in his hand. The candlelight in the room was strong. The crystal reflected a dazzling brilliance in the firelight. The onlookers let out a lot of exclamations. Hearing everyone's exclamations, that Luosha trader couldn't help but show some pride. Chu Qingyan looked at it from afar. It was a bit like the heart of the ocean she saw on TV. But this was ancient times. There were many strange things of every description. She felt that it could be something else. That toy looks good. Even the experienced and knowledgeable Higashio Motetsu couldn't help but take a few more glances. Chu Qingyan nodded. This trip could be considered to have broadened her horizons. "You know it." "I don't know. This kind of thing is more suitable for you girls. This young master doesn't study this kind of thing," Higashio Motetsu said matter-of-factly. "TSK, you don't know, so you're looking for an excuse." Chu Qingyan shook her head in her heart. "What's the big deal even if you admit it? You're just concerned about your face." However, Chu Qingyan's mind was focused on the debate in front of her. She didn't know if it was just her imagination, but she felt that when the Russian trader took out the item, Bai Shaoxing's eyes flashed with disdain. But when she took a closer look, his eyes had already returned to normal. "You don't seem to understand the rules of our palace," Bai Shaoxing said. "What do you mean?" The Russian trader frowned and asked unhappily. Bai Shaoxing looked at him and chuckled. "I only accept challenges. I don't answer people's questions." As soon as these words came out, everyone was confused. "What do you mean?" Chu Qingyan was puzzled. Higashio Motetsu smiled. This trader probably doesn't even know what he has in his hands. He just wants to use Bai Shaoxing to find out the origin of this thing. Chu Qingyan nodded. It was no wonder that Bai Shaoxing had such an expression just now. This person was obviously here to take advantage of the situation. He had no intention of making things difficult for Bai Shaoxing in the first place. He just wanted to take advantage of the situation to achieve his own goals. Higashio Motetsu's voice wasn't loud, but he didn't deliberately lower it. The traders around him could all hear him. Those people cast disdainful looks at the Russian trader. How despicable! The Russian trader also heard it. He turned around and glared at Higashio Motetsu and Chu Qingyan. Then he stubbornly said to Bai Shaoxing, "How do you know that I don't know what this thing is? Are you afraid that you'll lose? Is that why you deliberately said such things to confuse the public? Bai Shaoxing, I didn't expect you to be a sore loser. How shameless! Scammers like you are the ones who are shameless." Bai Shaoxing's voice was neither fast nor slow. He wasn't affected by the other party at all. Then he continued, "Since you want to lose so badly, it's not impossible." The Russian trader's eyes lit up. Unfortunately, when Bai Shaoxing said the last words, he suddenly panicked. "For the sake of fairness, you write down the information you have about this crystal stone on a piece of paper. After you've written it, this highness will tell you. If it matches what you wrote, then this highness will admit defeat. But if you're trying to fool this highness, what compensation should I get from you? Bai Shaoxing glanced at the Russian trader and suddenly smiled. This highness thinks that your eyes are not bad. It'll be fun to gouge them out and play with them. When such bloody words were spoken, the surrounding temperature suddenly dropped. Chu Qingyan felt a chill run down her spine. This person didn't say anything, but when he did, it was shocking. Do you know how the top 10 experts by his side came about? Higashio Motetsu felt her back stiffen and couldn't help but want to tease her. Chu Qingyan looked up at him with a puzzled expression. How did they come about? They all lost to him or had something to ask of him. After the transaction, their tongues were cut off and they stayed by his side as slaves or maids for the rest of their lives. Higashio Motetsu said word by word. He wasn't surprised to see the fear in the little girl's eyes. He shook his head. The little girl had courage, but she didn't have enough experience. She still needed to work harder. However, Higashio Motetsu somewhat underestimated her. Her fear only lasted for a moment. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes at the person who was talking cheerfully in front of her. He didn't treat people as humans. This kind of person was really scary. However, the strong preyed on the weak and the survival of the fittest. This was the law of survival in this world. You, the Russian trader pointed at him but couldn't say anything. It was unknown whether he was angry or scared, or both. Do you want to bet or not? If you dawdle any longer, the transaction will be over. Bai Shaoxing said in a bored tone. As soon as he finished speaking, the onlookers also started to stir. There were many people who wanted to bet with Bai Shaoxing. They couldn't delay time because of this person. Bai Shaoxing, how did you know that I don't know the details of this crystal? The Russian trader had already given up. However, he was still unwilling to give up and finally struggled to ask. This kind of crystal can't come into contact with the human body. Otherwise, it will lose its luster. Bai Shaoxing didn't say too much. The Russian trader cupped his hands in salute. Thank you for your advice. Then he retreated dejectedly. At this time, the crowd gathered again, wanting to trade with Bai Shaoxing. But at this time, Bai Shaoxing unexpectedly raised his hand. Although he didn't say anything, the crowd automatically quieted down. This should be the innate majesty of a person in power. Even if his figure was casual and his movements were careless, the crowd still looked up to him. Today I'm tired. Next, I'll only accept the challenge of 3 people. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd of onlookers started to stir. We're all here for you. How can you change the rules so casually? One person angrily asked. The stall owners set up in Blue Manor had to stay until the end of the transaction unless someone's item was successfully traded. Chu Qingyan also felt somewhat indignant. He really didn't play by the rules. Because I'm willful. Bai Shaoxing smiled calmly. Chapter 427. Chu Qingyan felt that the word willful was enough to shut so many people out. She felt uncomfortable hearing it. Moreover, there were so many people present. Basically, they were all here to challenge Bai Shaoxing and ask for an exchange. Chu Qingyan clenched her fists. She was a little anxious. Just now, she was lining up. No matter what, it would be her turn. Now, it had become 1,000 soldiers crossing a single log bridge. The news was not far from her. In the blink of an eye, a mountain was in front of her. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't angry. There are so many people here. How do you choose? In the midst of the noisy crowd, Higashio Motetsu's voice was like bamboo shoots after the rain. It suddenly parted the clouds and made everyone quiet down. Bai Shaoxing pondered for a moment. Then he chuckled and said, How about this? If each of you raises a question to my satisfaction, you will become one of the 3 people. What is considered to be to your satisfaction? A trader suppressed his anger and said, Those who could come here were either rich or noble. When had they ever suffered such humiliation? It was like buying vegetables in a market, and they had become cabbages that could be chosen by others. How could they not be angry? But at this time, they had to ask for help. They could only swallow their anger. This is a good question. Otherwise, one of the questions can stump me. Bai Xiaoxing said very casually, but this sentence easily aroused the anger of the crowd. Bai Xiaoxing, there's nothing you don't know, nothing you don't know. How can our questions be difficult for you? Are you deliberately trying to avoid the competition? Is that why you came up with such a trick? Trader A was furious. Are you worried that you won't be able to see the details of the thing later and it will damage your reputation? If you admit it, we won't make things difficult for you. Trader B said aggressively. Listening to his voice, one could tell that he was really angry. Everyone criticized him one after another, but it didn't affect Bai Xiaoxing at all. He leaned leisurely on the pillar, his eyes half closed, as if he was about to fall asleep. If you have the strength to argue, why don't you use your brain to think before I change my mind? You only have the time to drink a cup of tea left. Otherwise, none of you will have a chance. Those who had come with hope retracted their accusing hands. The all-knowing man in ganghood had an eccentric personality and was hard to fathom. His reputation had long been on par with his. If he really left, they would lose more than they gained. Thus, everyone had no choice but to compromise. At this time, the black-clothed man from the Blue Manor had already placed the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone on the table and had the participants write down their questions. Chu Qingyan took a deep look at Bai Xiaoxing, who had already closed his eyes to rest. She had to admit that he was very impressive to be able to do this with just words. She suddenly understood a principle. Only if you were strong enough would you not be trampled on by others. The so-called strength did not only lie in one's status and authority, but also in one's wisdom and brain power. She lowered her head and fiercely clenched her fists. Then she took the brush from the black-clothed man's hands. At this moment, she was not in the mood to admire this brush that could be lower than a normal person's lifetime income. Instead, she turned around and walked towards an empty table. Do you need this young master's help? Higashio Motetsu pressed down on her shoulder and smiled seductively. Chu Qingyan heard his words and met his unfathomable smile. Are you trying to say that one condition in exchange for one question? Higashio Motetsu was stunned. He had not thought of this, but since the little girl had brought it up, then he would do it in passing. It was not bad to have one more condition. He had a premonition that these conditions would be useful in the future. He nodded generously. The one who knows me best is the little girl. Chu Qingyan brushed his hand away in annoyance and rolled her eyes at him. Then there is no need to trouble young Master Dongting. I will rely on myself. Higashio Motetsu was not angry. In fact, he also wanted to know how the little fellow would deal with this situation. He did not want the person he valued to hide under someone else's umbrella. Although the participants were resentful, most of them chose to swallow their anger and took the pen and paper. Even if they knew that they would not be selected, they still wanted to give it a try. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and felt an unprecedented pressure. However, she was not in a hurry to write. Instead, she analyzed Bai Xiaoxing. He knew astronomy and geography, and he also had an intelligence network to help him collect information. He should know some of the common things or the secrets of the aristocrats. Then what could he not know? Now, it seemed that she could only rely on luck and intelligence. She did not believe that she, a modern person, could not beat an ancient person. Higashio Motetsu, who had taken a seat, looked at her with her head lowered in contemplation. He did not disturb her. Although she had rejected him, he did not know why, but he had a premonition that this little girl would not let him down. Soon, the time was up. Because the real identity of the participants could not be revealed during the transaction, in order to prevent someone from impersonating them, they had to submit the paper in person. After Chu Qingyan finished writing, basically everyone had finished writing and lined up. Unfortunately, she was the last one. She stood up and looked at the idle Higashio Motetsu. She was somewhat puzzled. Don't you want to give it a try? This young master has nothing to ask for. Higashio Motetsu's answer was very annoying. Chu Qingyan spread her hands and did not force him. There were a lot of people, 30 to 40 people lined up. But it was useless to have more people. They could not withstand Bai Xiaoxing's elimination. She did not know if these people's questions were too superficial or if Bai Xiaoxing was really too powerful. After one round, more than half of the people had already been eliminated. She saw those who were eliminated standing to the side in a daze. Some left in despair, some wanted to wait until the end to see who would have the last laugh. They probably had the mentality of watching Bai Xiaoxing make a fool of himself. After half a cup of tea's time had passed, there were only 3 people left from the dozens of people. Bai Xiaoxing chuckled with a trace of sarcasm and said regretfully, "Is there not even a single question that this king agrees with?" This naked mockery made many people gnash their teeth. Chu Qingyan, who was standing at the end of the line, laughed softly. "Young man, some words should not be said so confidently, otherwise it would be a slap in the face. You still want to match this king's couplet? I have to say, this first line is barely passable." Bai Xiaoxing said, and with a stroke of his pen he matched the second line and casually handed it to that person. That person took a look at it, sighed and walked away. The second last person. Magic, page 133, line 5. The second character is Bai Xiaoxing said without any pressure. Chu Qingyan glanced at him. He could even answer this kind of question. As expected, his ability was not to be underestimated. Only Chu Qingyan was left. When those who had been defeated saw that there was only a young boy left, they could not help but shake their heads. It seemed that they would not be able to see Bai Xiaoxing suffer today. When Bai Xiaoxing saw her in the crowd, he only felt that such a young person was surprisingly calm. Now that he saw her in the line, although he was surprised, he treated her equally. He casually took the paper that Chu Qingyan handed to him. After opening it, he was stunned. Chapter 428. Bai Xiaoxing's expression caught many people's attention. They stopped in their tracks and gathered around him curiously. Bai Xiaoxing was astonished when he opened the paper. He had been stumped by many questions over the years, but this was the first time he had ever stumped someone as young as her. Although he believed that there would always be someone better than him, he still found it hard to accept. "Did you come up with this question?" Bai Xiaoxing felt that he would lose face if he was stumped by this young girl. Who was Bai Xiaoxing? He was a person who was never willing to talk nonsense with others. It was simply too surprising for him to suddenly ask such a question. When Chu Qingyan saw the change in his expression, she knew that her question had successfully stumped him. She didn't deny it. "Just, can you answer it or not?" Chu Qingyan's crisp words shocked everyone, including Bai Xiaoxing. Because she was a girl. People who stood at a higher position were more deeply rooted in male chauvinism. No one had expected that the person who stumped Bai Xiaoxing was a girl who looked like she was in her early teens. Chu Qingyan didn't pay attention to the speculative and inquisitive gazes cast at her. She looked straight at Bai Xiaoxing and waited for his answer. She had forgotten to take the voice-changing pill that Yen Luo had prepared for her when she went out today. But that didn't matter. What mattered to her was the result. Bai Xiaoxing lowered his head and looked at the paper in his hand. He frowned and didn't say a word. Dongting Wangyu, who was standing at the side, saw this and couldn't help but look at Chu Qingyan intently. He didn't see what the lass had written earlier, but he was curious now. Higashio Motetsu wasn't the only one who was curious. Many people present were also intrigued. They also wanted to see if they could answer the male protagonist Bai Xiaoxing's question. "Bai Xiaoxing, what's written on the paper? Read it out." A curious trader raised his voice and asked. Bai Xiaoxing put the paper on the table. Someone took it and read aloud, "In this world, which came first, the chicken or the egg?" When that person read it out loud, he was also a little stunned. This question was too tricky. Of course, the chicken comes first. Without the chicken, where would the eggs come from? One of the onlookers blurted out, but he felt that something was wrong. "Brother, how can there be a chicken without eggs?" Another person patted his shoulder and shook his head. "Then which came first? The chicken or the egg?" A doubtful voice sounded, asking the question that was on everyone's mind. Therefore, everyone shifted their gazes to Bai Xiaoxing, hoping that this knowledgeable person would be able to answer their questions. When Higashio Motetsu learned of the question, he looked at Chu Qingyan in surprise. This question would make people fall into an endless loop. It was a difficult problem to solve. However, at this moment, Bai Xiaoxing was at his wit's end. Although he was arrogant, he was also a person who was willing to accept his loss. If he knew, he knew. If he didn't know, he didn't know. Little girl, what's the answer? When this question came out, everyone immediately turned their gazes to Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan didn't answer him, but asked seriously, you don't know the answer, right? I succeeded, didn't I? Bai Shaoxing raised his eyebrows and nodded non-committally, that's right. I can't answer this question of yours. You win. Chu Qingyan nodded, then I have a chance to make a deal with you. Bai Shaoxing nodded, you will be the only person who can make a deal with me. Chu Qingyan breathed a sigh of relief and couldn't help but make a peace sign to Higashio Motetsu. Although Higashio Motetsu didn't know the meaning of her gesture, when he saw her eyes curl up, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. Little girl, you've already got a chance. Now, please answer our questions. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? The onlookers were a little anxious. Curiosity killed the cat. Chu Qingyan smiled slyly. From a biological point of view, I also don't know if the chicken or the egg came first. This question is still a riddle to this day. What? Bai Shaoxing frowned and looked at her. At this moment, there were other people who were jealous of Chu Qingyan for getting this opportunity who were standing by the side and speaking out in dissatisfaction. Little girl, you didn't abide by the rules. How can you ask a question that even you don't know the answer to? The last person was disqualified because of this. That's right. Bai Shaoxing, she doesn't have the right to make a deal with you. That's right, she broke the rules. With so many people criticizing her, he was worried that she wouldn't be able to take it. Higashio Motetsu walked to Chu Qingyan's side in displeasure, intending to speak up for her. But when he saw that she had her hands behind her back and he couldn't see her expression, he shut his mouth. He was a little surprised, but he was also relieved. Today's little girl was already enough to surprise him, but he was still looking forward to the surprises that she would create. After waiting for everyone to finish speaking, Chu Qingyan met Bai Shaoxing's probing gaze and smiled brightly. This little girl knows the rules of your trade, but in the rules of the game just now, your distinguished self didn't state that you can't ask questions that you don't have an answer to, so this little girl didn't break the rules. You're obviously twisting words and forcing logic. Bai Shaoxing, the rules have been there for so many years. Do you still need to state it again? Interesting. Bai Shaoxing nodded slightly. There was a smile in his voice, but no one knew what the meaning of his smile was. He didn't state this rule that everyone knew, so she took advantage of this loophole. He could only say that this little girl was quite quick-witted. Seeing Bai Shaoxing's attitude, it was obvious that he had tacitly agreed with Chu Qingyan's words. One was willing to hit while the other was willing to be hit. What position did these bystanders have to speak up? They could only look on helplessly as Chu Qingyan got the opportunity. Then, little girl, take out the things you want to trade. Bai Shaoxing didn't waste any time and got straight to the point. Chu Qingyan also had the same intention. She took out the bundle on her shoulder and opened it on the table. The people who were about to leave had already gathered around, surrounding Chu Qingyan and Bai Shaoxing in a circle. The scene just now had already made everyone curious. They guessed that if this person could make things difficult for Bai Shaoxing, then she would take out something that could make things difficult for him again. However, the people present were divided into 3 factions. One faction didn't get the opportunity, so they were dissatisfied. They hoped that Chu Qingyan's things wouldn't make things difficult for Bai Shaoxing, so they left in disappointment. This was the mentality that if I die, you die, everyone will die together. The other faction had been suppressed by Bai Shaoxing many times, so they hoped that someone would be able to dampen Bai Shaoxing's spirit. This was the mentality that they wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. The other faction didn't care if it had nothing to do with them. In any case, they didn't mind too much trouble and just wanted to join in the fun. Chu Qingyan didn't care what these people were thinking. She took out a small cloth bundle from the bundle and carefully opened it. This thing of hers would blind their titanium alloy eyes. Chapter 429. In view of her question, Bai Shaoxing was also a little curious about her item. But more than that, he wanted to wash away his shame. He could allow himself to be defeated by one person, but he couldn't allow himself to be defeated by the same person twice. Because he, Bai Xiaoxing, also had a backbone. And he didn't believe that there was anything in this world that he didn't know. Unfortunately, when he saw the item Chu Qingyan took out, he felt that his backbone was about to be deflated. What the hell was this? His only reason at this time collapsed. When Chu Qingyan showed the item in her hand, it was no surprise that everyone was sluggish and puzzled. She had already expected this reaction. She put the item on the table in front of Bai Xiaoxing and smiled cutely. "Please take a look, this little girl is not in a hurry to answer." Listening to this tone, it was obvious that she had a card up her sleeve. Unfortunately, he couldn't refute anything, because this thing was indeed unfamiliar to him. This thing seemed to be made of bamboo and transparent agate. A bamboo tube as thick as an adult man's arm was used as a side, and inside it was a transparent lens. A 1-foot-long bamboo pole as thick as a little finger was used as a handle to hold it. Bai Xiaoxing observed it for a moment, and then reached out to hold the bamboo pole. He first looked at the appearance, and he had to say that the shape was very strange. It was the first time he had seen this kind of thing. The people on the side saw Bai Xiaoxing's careful observation and were somewhat impatient. The people who spoke were traders who had the mentality of, "I die, you die together." "I say, little girl, you can't just take out something to fool people, right?" The people with such mentality immediately echoed, and even told Bai Xiaoxing to ignore her. But the traders who had the mentality of adding insult to injury also chimed in. "Don't talk nonsense, the world is big, there are all kinds of strange things, maybe Bai Xiaoxing doesn't know what this thing is." The people with such mentality immediately echoed, and also told Chu Qingyan to ignore these villains. Just when the two factions were about to clash, the third faction, who didn't mind more trouble and just wanted to join in the fun, continued to watch the show from the side. One person with sharp eyes noticed that Bai Xiaoxing suddenly pointed his hand at that thing. Bai Xiaoxing held that thing, but couldn't see anything special. But when he looked down through the mirror, he suddenly saw that the cloth bag on the table was enlarged in an instant. He was somewhat inconceivable, and tried to put his hand under the mirror. He found that the finger in the mirror was as thick as a stick. He was simply shocked. And this scene was also seen by the people on the side, and they all cried out in surprise. Someone immediately brought a piece of paper and let Bai Xiaoxing the changes, those densely packed, those small words, they were instantly enlarged, of course, of those words, and even the vertical and horizontal. What is this thing? Everyone's heart. Chu Qingyan stood at the side and did not interfere with their practice. Her small face under the mask was smiling brightly and adorably. This thing had never appeared in this dynasty before. Even if they racked their brains, they would not be able to think of anything. So she wasn't worried at all. And Higashio Motetsu was already full of questions when the thing was taken out. He calmly observed everyone's actions, and found that this little thing was quite mysterious. After he exclaimed in surprise, he shook his head at Chu Qingyan with a smile. "Little girl, I couldn't tell that you really had such a rare treasure. Don't look down on people, it'll be so bright that you'll be blinded in minutes." Chu Qingyan was in a good mood, and the tone of her voice was much more relaxed. Higashio Motetsu saw that she was so confident and couldn't help but smile. He really didn't misjudge her. "Little girl, this one has never seen this thing before, and also doesn't recognize it." Bai Xiaoxing finished sizing it up and put it down. He didn't refuse, directly admitting it, and there wasn't any displeasure in his voice. She liked this kind of personality, straightforward. "You let me win, you let me win." Chu Qingyan cupped her hands, her eyes smiling. "Little girl, please reveal the mystery. But this lord will remind you, if you don't know the details of this thing, then this transaction is not valid." Bai Xiaoxing said with his hands clasped behind his back. When he saw the thing just now, he knew that it wasn't within his scope of knowledge, but he didn't directly admit it. Instead, he picked it up to examine it, and his heart was still very curious about it. So at this time, he hoped that this little girl could give him a satisfactory answer, and not be opportunistic. How long has it been since he met a worthy opponent, so don't disappoint him. Bai Xiaoxing's words caused everyone's whispers to fade away. The room was filled with people, and it was so quiet that even the sound of a needle falling to the ground could be heard. Some people hoped that Chu Qingyan didn't know, some people were anxious for Chu Qingyan to explain, and some people were still watching the play. But no matter what the others thought, it had nothing to do with her. Her purpose in coming to the Blue Manor had always been very clear, and no one could stop her. Chu Qingyan picked up the thing and spoke with assurance. This thing is called a magnifying glass, and it has two functions. The first is to be able to magnify the image, which everyone should have experienced just now. For example, if you can't see a small word, you can use this magnifying glass to magnify the word, or you can use lines and so on. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, everyone was confused by the three words magnifying glass, but after hearing her explanation, everyone more or less understood. What's the second function? Bai Xiaoxing repeated the three words in his mouth, then asked. Chu Qingyan continued. The second function is to be able to gather light to make a fire. Everyone has heard of drilling wood to make a fire, so this magnifying glass also has this ability. As long as you put a piece of paper or dried leaves on the ground and point the magnifying glass at the sun, it will gather light on the paper, and after a while, it will be able to ignite. Little girl, you're deceiving people. There's no sunlight here, so how can we verify that what you're saying is true? The traders, who had the mentality of, if we die, you die, we die together, began to fire again. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. It was true that this point couldn't be tested here. She played with the magnifying glass in her hand and smiled innocently. The geographical conditions are limited, so I can't demonstrate it to everyone. I can only leave it to everyone's opinions. I believe you. Bai Xiaoxing ignored everyone's opinions and said indifferently. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and smiled. You're not afraid that I'm lying to you? This lord has seen the surface of the mirror just now, so you don't have to doubt this lord's ability. Bai Xiaoxing replied concisely. Everyone fell silent when they heard this. Although Bai Xiaoxing was arrogant, he had the ability to back it up. Moreover, what he disdained the most was lying. Otherwise, how could the all-knowing sect have been able to stand tall for so many years? It was because the all-knowing sect's only rule was honesty. This little girl admires your excellency's ability. Chu Qingyan admired his attitude. There's no need to flatter this lord. You've already defeated this lord, so you can write down what you want to know. Bai Xiaoxing waved his hand and ordered someone to bring over a brush, ink, and paper. Chapter 430. Although Bai Xiaoxing's expression was calm, his heart was crumbling. After all, he had lost to the same person twice in one day. If this were to spread, he would lose a lot of face. But if he won, he had to be gracious. If he lost, he had to be magnanimous. Thus, he forced himself to smile, but his heart was crying. Bai Xiaoxing's current state of mind was extremely gloomy. The good show was over. Some people were still unsatisfied, some people were full of complaints, and some people didn't care. But they all left one after another. Lawn Manor's transactions had a time limit. Now that they had finished watching the show, they should seize the time to find what they wanted to trade. The room was empty. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she suppressed the excitement in her heart. Then she took the pen and paper. Just as she was about to write, she hesitated for a moment and turned around. Sir Bai Xiaoxing, do you only trade once? I have something here. Can I trade with you again? Chu Qingyan looked at him expectantly. As soon as her voice fell, Bai Xiaoxing's brows furrowed. One token enters one door, one transaction. This is the rule. The black-clothed man from Lawn Manor standing next to him glanced at him subconsciously. The rules of Lawn Manor meant nothing to this man. This should be an excuse to shirk responsibility. That's right. At this time, Bai Xiaoxing still hadn't recovered from the blow. He wouldn't allow Chu Qingyan to challenge his token again. From the exchange just now, this little girl was able to make him speechless twice. If she did it again, it would be hard to say what strange thing it would be. He was also a person who cherished his face, so he refused without any discussion. All right. Chu Qingyan regretfully turned around. She earnestly wrote down her question on a piece of paper. After drying it, she handed it to Bai Xiaoxing. Bai Xiaoxing took the paper and opened it. His eyes swept over it. The corners of his lips curled up. He put the paper away and handed it to the black-clothed man. When you leave, lawn manners people will give you the answer. He was originally worried that it would be a question that he had never heard of before, but now he was relieved. From what he said, it was obvious that he knew the answer. Chu Qingyan was pleasantly surprised, but she still didn't know what to do with this news. If she was too obsessed with the answer, when one day it was within reach, she would feel like she was dreaming. Was it true or not? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but step forward to confirm. Your Excellency, do you know its whereabouts? Little girl, it's true that I've lost to you twice, but my reputation isn't just for show. You can rest assured. Bai Xiaoxing could understand her thoughts. After all, this herb had disappeared for many years. It was normal for her to be worried. Chu Qingyan nodded. Her heart was already bursting with joy. It was great that she finally knew. She was about to cry with joy. Higashio Motetsu saw how excited she was under the mask. He couldn't help but look away. What was so good about Xiaosu? At this time, there were still a few people standing around. When the two of them finished exchanging, one of them walked forward. Little girl, where did you get this magnifying glass? A man wearing a cyan fang mask walked forward. His voice was a bit feminine. Chu Qingyan subconsciously restrained her smile. She looked at him with vigilance. He suddenly came up to inquire for no reason. She was a bit uneasy. This thing was bought by this little girl's grandfather from a foreign merchant a few days ago. She didn't answer truthfully, but made up a reason. If a magnifying glass was used to read a book or light a fire, it really didn't have any magical uses. When a normal person heard about this function, they would only find it novel. But once the novelty passed, they wouldn't think much of it. But the people here, what kind of people were they? They were people at the peak of power and wealth. They never did business without capital. Once they saw something, there would be a magical use for it. Chu Qingyan suddenly thought of many things. For example, the lines on the official seal or the imperial jade seal, or the damaged treasure map. She didn't dare to think about it anymore. She couldn't be blamed for thinking too much. She had watched too many political dramas. She was also afraid of being remembered by others. After the feminine person finished asking, he didn't say anything else. He just looked deeply at Chu Qingyan, then returned to his original position. Higashio Motetsu leaned over to her ear and said, Little girl, this thing of yours is too eye-catching. I think. He paused. He didn't say it, but his meaning was self-evident. Chu Qingyan nodded, indicating that she also noticed it. If this person said that he wanted to exchange with her after asking, then she could make a deal with him. But this person left without saying anything. This made Chu Qingyan feel very uneasy. Although the rules of Lan Village were there to ensure everyone's safety and identity, the rules of Lan Village were only effective within the village. After leaving, who would care about you? Moreover, she was in Jiang country. She was young and had obvious characteristics. If someone wanted to find her, her whereabouts could be exposed. Right now, her and Big Ice Cube's identity in Jiang country was sensitive. She didn't want to cause any more trouble. She turned her eyes. She glanced at Bai Xiaoxing's snow-white figure that was about to leave. Her eyes immediately lit up. Your Excellency Bai Xiaoxing, Your Excellency Bai Xiaoxing. Bai Xiaoxing heard the shout behind him. He stopped in his tracks and turned around with some surprise. Little girl, is there anything else? He didn't have the habit of chatting with people other than his wife. But this little girl didn't make him dislike her. Moreover, he had lost 2 rounds in a row. He didn't treat her like others. Your Excellency Bai Xiaoxing, you've helped me so much. I have nothing to repay you with, so I'll give you this magnifying glass. Chu Qingyan handed the magnifying glass from the cloth bag to him. Bai Xiaoxing did not take the pouch immediately. Instead, he looked past Chu Qingyan and looked at the people behind her who were avoiding his gaze. Unknowingly, a black flood dragon tattoo could be seen at the corner of their black robes. Southern Song Country? He heard that the Southern Song Country's royal family had recently obtained a treasure map. Unfortunately, the treasure map was so damaged that it was almost unrecognizable. No wonder they were eyeing this little girl's things. However, It had to be said that this little girl was very smart. With his status, these people would be a bit wary. What use does this highness have for this? He withdrew his gaze and looked back at Chu Qingyan. It's useless now, but that doesn't mean it won't be useful in the future. For example, when you're old and can't see clearly, you can use this magnifying glass to read books. Chu Qingyan very considerately analyzed. Bai Shaoxing thought of his wife and thought that she might like it, so he nodded his head. That sounds pretty good. Bai Shaoxing had the people from the Blue Manor take the item away. Now that the hot potato had been dealt with, Chu Qingyan felt the burning gaze on her back disappear. Her brows relaxed. When the other party was about to leave again, Chu Qingyan suddenly smiled playfully. That's right, Your Excellency Bai Shaoxing. Actually, there's an answer to your previous question. He helped her solve her problem, so she should return the favor, right? Chapter 431. Oh! Bai Shaoxing once again stood in front of her. His eyes lit up as he looked at her with interest. I'd like to hear the details. Chu Qingyan smiled mischievously. Although there's no answer to that question from a biological point of view, from a brain teaser point of view, it's the chicken first, then the egg. Why is that? Eggs, the chicken comes first, the egg comes later. Of course, the chicken comes first. Bai Shaoxing was startled at first, then he suddenly smiled. He didn't think that Chu Qingyan was teasing him. So that's how it is. Young lady, you're quite interesting. Bai Shaoxing looked at her deeply. Chu Qingyan subconsciously took a step back. Generally, when someone said that you were interesting, there were a few possibilities. First, they had taken a fancy to you. Second, they were sarcastically saying that the other party had already taken notice of you, and you were going to be unlucky. What about the third one? She hadn't thought of it yet. She felt that the first possibility was impossible, but the second one was possible. Bai Shaoxing saw her reaction and laughed heartily. Young lady, you're not bad. If there's a chance to see you again. After saying this, he did not say anything else. He only smiled and left. Chu Qingyan looked at his back view and couldn't help but laugh. This kind of person was quite interesting. She thought of the third possibility, which was admiration. But she didn't think that there was anything about her that could catch his eye. Chu Qingyan thought that in Bai Shaoxing's eyes, there weren't many people who could make him stumped. This person in front of her was one of them. If he reluctantly remembered her, perhaps he could turn the tables when they met in the future. After Bai Shaoxing left, Higashio Motetsu leisurely walked to her side. He couldn't hide the surprise on his face. But with the mask, Chu Qingyan couldn't see it. Young lady, although the method of changing the target isn't brilliant, it's very practical. He commented. Chu Qingyan shrugged. It's just a stopgap measure. At this time, do you have a better idea? Higashio Motetsu nodded. He had to admit that she had indeed made those people who had bad intentions give up. But, don't you think it's a pity? You're giving away your things to someone else just like that. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan's lips curled up into a wide smile. It's not a pity. If she wanted as much as she wanted, she could have as much as she wanted. In any case, she had the omnipotent wood spirit, hee. Higashio Motetsu heard her sneaky smile and couldn't help but laugh. This little girl's idea was very big, so he didn't have to worry about it. You still have a token in your hand. Where are you going? Higashio Motetsu asked her. This question stumped Chu Qingyan. She rubbed the nameless tablet with her fingers and fell into deep thought. She had already found the whereabouts of the ice crystal flower that she wanted. She would be able to get it once she left Lawn Manor. The whereabouts of the love grass were also known, but the information was not complete. But where else could he exchange for information in Lanzhuang? Why don't we go to the auction house and have a look? Higashio Motetsu saw that she was a little embarrassed and offered a suggestion. Auction house. Why does this name sound so modern? Could it be that the founder of this underground lawn manor was also a transmigrator? Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue. Could it be that transmigrating now was the same as going abroad, where one could transmigrate in a flash? The people of Lawn Manor will provide something on the stage and then let the people below bid. If the owner of the item catches their eye, then the deal can be made. Higashio Motetsu explained. In fact, this was the main reason why he came to Lawn Manor. That's good. Chu Qingyan nodded. Thus, the two of them walked together to the auction house. When they arrived at the auction house, Chu Qingyan felt like she was in a modern auction house. There was a large square stage covered in red cloth. 3 sides of the stage were surrounded by gold pillars and silver chains. In the middle of the stage, there was a display table and a gong. At this time, the auction had not officially started yet. Normally, this was the main event of Lawn Manor's transactions. Before entering, everyone had to pay 1,000 silver taels. It was said that it was the entrance fee. 1,000 silver taels was not a small amount. It could be seen that the people who stayed were all rich. Chu Qingyan did not let Higashio Motetsu help her pay. She took out 1,000 silver taels and gave it to the guard. Higashio Motetsu raised his eyebrows. "Little girl, you don't need to be so polite with this young master." "I'm not being polite with you. It's just that I can do it myself. I don't want to trouble others. Besides, if you come up with another condition, I won't be able to handle it," Chu Qingyan said to him in a natural and unrestrained manner. Higashio Motetsu's eyes deeply looked at her as she went to find a seat. He had been in Jianghu for so many years. If he could rely on any woman he met, he would have already stuck to her. Even if he rejected her, he would reject her. He was not as straightforward as her. She really did not covet a single cent from others. This was the side of her that was different from other women. She was independent and did not rely on others. At the same time, she was also self-reliant. A long time later, Higashio Motetsu recalled how she had unknowingly taken root in his heart all these years. When he recalled how they met and got to know each other, he understood that no matter how hard a person's heart was, they would not be able to resist the invasion of mist like little by little. There was no need to deliberately do it. Just a glance, an action, a sentence was enough. By the time he finally realized, he had already fallen into her trap and was unable to extricate himself. But for Chu Qingyan, this was not a big deal. When she was in the modern era, her parents were not around. She grew up with her grandparents. Wasn't there a saying that the children of the poor take charge of the family at an early age? When she was young, her family was not rich. So she preferred the feeling of being independent and self-reliant rather than relying on others. But because her parents were not around when she was young, she did not act coquettishly nor did she let herself be. So when she met Xiao Su, she slowly revealed the desire in her subconscious. Who told her to be only 10 years old this year? And Xiao Su satisfied all the aspects she wanted. He was steady, knowledgeable, cold on the outside, gentle on the inside, tolerant, wise. He was a teacher, a friend, and an elder. She could forget her real age, act coquettishly to him, pluck the hair on his head, and return to the childhood that she could only wish for but could not ask for. So sometimes, when she met someone, fate was very important. The opportunity was also very important. And when it came to money, her family's Big Ice Cube had asked Hong Yi not to shortchange her monthly allowance since the last time she went shopping. Big Ice Cube had always been generous to her. Now that she was a little rich woman also had her pride. How could she accept other people's payment? Chu Qingyan did not notice his gaze. Instead, she focused on finding 2 seats with an excellent view and not too conspicuous. After she sat down, she looked at him and waved. This feeling was really strange. It was as if she had returned to the time when they went to the freshmen's welcome party together in the dormitory. She was also standing alone while the others came slowly. It was a pity that all of this could only be left in her memory. Higashio Motetsu looked at her happily waving at him. He could not help but curve his almond-shaped eyes and strode toward her. "Little girl, this young master seems to be more and more interested in you." Chapter 432. When they sat down, the traders who participated in the auction came one after another. At this time, the venue was a little dark, and there was even some white smoke coming out of nowhere. If they wanted to create a misty scene, they were obviously thinking too much. She looked at those green masks with fangs and felt that she had mistakenly entered the hell of ghosts and snakes. She didn't understand what the owner of the underground Lawn Manor was thinking. Fortunately, she didn't have a heart attack, otherwise she would have really gone to hell. The dozens of tables were gradually filled. In front of Chu Qingyan sat a man wearing a black impermanence mask. Behind him sat a man wearing a white impermanence mask, and on the right was a judge's mask. Fortunately, Higashio Motetsu next to her was not wearing the mask of King Yenluo. Otherwise, she really would have thought that she was not participating in an auction, but a trial of hell. These people basically didn't know each other, unless they brought their own people. So they each occupied a table. However, gossip couldn't cover the boundary of identity. Have you heard? Among the 3 items auctioned today, one of them is a precious sword that is hard to get. A man wearing a bull mask began to speak. Precious sword? It can't be that bronze sword, right? The man wearing a horse mask said in surprise. I heard about it too. It seems to be that bronze sword. The snake-faced man in front echoed. Yes, it's the bronze sword. I heard that 10 years ago, it was in the hands of the #1 swordsman in the martial arts world. Later, this swordsman died and disappeared. I didn't expect it to appear here today. The bull man shook his head and sighed. It was unknown whether he was lamenting the early death of the swordsman or the reappearance of the bronze sword. What is the bronze sword? Is it very powerful? Chu Qingyan asked in a low voice. She knew nothing about the martial arts world. She only felt that the name of the sword was quite domineering. However, the people around her couldn't help but exclaim, which aroused her curiosity. Higashio Motetsu smiled. It can be ranked 3rd on the list of weapons. Do you think it's powerful? That's pretty impressive. Chu Qingyan nodded. What about the 1st and 2nd place? Ranked 1st is the fiery silkworm saber, which is in the hands of the Wulian Alliance's Chiohe. Ranked 2nd is the lingering whip, which is said to be in the collection of a princess of a certain country. As for which country it is, this young master has not researched further, Higashio Motetsu replied. You really know a lot. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but praise. Higashio Motetsu smoothed the creases on his sleeves and smiled faintly. He came from the Jianghu, so he had to know these things. He had to know himself and his enemy. Otherwise, how could he take over the Moon Palace in the future? Today, apart from the bronze sword, there are 2 other treasures. One is the heartless pearl, and the other is the treasure in the palm. Higashio Motetsu took the initiative to tell her. What are heartless bead and palm treasure? Chu Qingyan blushed with shame. She really knew too little about these things. She didn't know if she would be mistaken as Granny Lu, who had just entered the Grand View Garden for the first time. Higashio Motetsu didn't laugh at her because of this. He explained, the heartless bead can be used to avoid poison. With it, common poisons are basically useless. It is usually used for self-defense. The treasure in the palm is actually a fruit. Fruit? Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows in disbelief. If it was just a simple fruit, I'm afraid it wouldn't have the qualifications to be on the trading platform, right? You're pretty smart. Higashio Motetsu smiled, but there was no praise in his words. He looked at the empty stage and smiled ambiguously. The treasure in the palm has another name. It's called the ginseng fruit. It's said that eating it can prolong one's life and has the effect of beautifying one's skin. It can also greatly increase one's power, but who knows? He said the last sentence very softly. Even if Chu Qingyan was sitting next to him, she still didn't hear it clearly. Chi, this reminds me of the ginseng fruit in Journey to the West. I didn't think there would be such a name here. The effects are almost the same. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. That's right, you came to Lanzhuang. You must have something to trade, right? Could it be one of these 3? Chu Qingyan unintentionally asked, but it made Higashio Motetsu withdraw his smile. That's right. Guess which one this young master wants? Chu Qingyan stared blankly. She really hit the nail on the head. She made an irresponsible guess. You wouldn't want that treasure in the palm, right? Higashio Motetsu lowered his eyebrows and smiled. He casually patted her head. Little girl, not bad. You can even guess this. Slapping his hand away, Chu Qingyan smoothed her hair and glared at him. What do you want that for? You're so young and you're already worried that you won't live long? Or do you want to increase your power? Higashio Motetsu took back his hand and leaned back in his chair. His gaze was lazy. My family's old man wants it. Otherwise, why would this young master come here to suffer? If I have the time, I might as well spend it in wine and women. This kind of ambition? Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes at him. This was the first time she heard him mention his family. How can you say that? Isn't he your father? Father? Higashio Motetsu propped up his chin with one hand and leaned against the table. He sneered. He didn't know how many years it had been since he called him father. Seeing him like this, there seemed to be something wrong. Chu Qingyan thought for a moment and asked, "Then where's your mother?" The person leaning softly on the table suddenly stiffened. A complex expression flashed through his phoenix eyes. He then coldly spat out, "Did." This cold aura was so oppressive that it made it hard for people to breathe. Chu Qingyan stared blankly for a moment. Her gaze fell on Higashio Motetsu, whose entire body was emitting a sorrowful mood. This was the first time she saw him look anything other than indifferent. "Dongting, are you all right?" "I'm sorry, At this time, she knew that she had asked a question that she shouldn't have. "Little girl, I'm just teasing you. The transaction is about to begin." Higashio Motetsu leaned back in his chair. His phoenix eyes slightly raised as if the scene just now didn't exist. Chu Qingyan saw that he had returned to normal and sighed in relief. However, she still felt guilty. Everyone had secrets that they didn't know. She shouldn't mention this topic in the future. The gong sounded and Chu Qingyan's gaze was attracted over. She saw that the previously empty stage was now filled with two people. They were a man and a woman with a golden boy and a jade girl. At the four corners of the stage stood a black-clothed person from Lanzhuang. It was obvious that this golden boy and jade girl were the hosts of this transaction. "Welcome from all over the world to my Lanzhuang. Lanzhuang is honored. Everyone should know the rules. As long as you bring out something that can satisfy the buyer, the transaction will be considered a success. All right, let's not waste any more words. Let's bring out the first treasure." After speaking, a person wearing a tiger mask stepped onto the stage. Following behind him was a black-clothed person holding a tray. The item on the tray was covered with a red cloth. Chu Qingyan, who already knew what the treasures were, was not as focused as the others. Her gaze scanned the seats around her. At first, she was aimless, but then she was attracted by a blue figure. Chapter 433. To be exact, what attracted her was the blue impatiens exposed under the cloak. Ever since she came to the Jiang Kingdom to look for herbs, she paid more attention to everything in the Jiang Kingdom. For example, this woman from the Jiang Kingdom who appeared at the Lan Manor auction. Someone who could embroider the flower of the country on her clothes was either a relative of the royal family or of noble status. Moreover, this person was a woman. Judging from her clothes, she should be very young. She remembered that in the Jiang Kingdom's palace, there was only the third princess other than the empress. There were not many royal family members in the Jiang Kingdom, but there were several female relatives. She wondered who this person was. Chu Qingyan was so engrossed in her observation that she only came back to her senses when the gong sounded. "Little girl, the bronze sword has been traded away," Higashio Motetsu said in her ear. "Who bought it?" Chu Qingyan looked around. "See for yourself." Higashio Motetsu motioned to her and then pointed to the man in gray who was about to go on stage. Chu Qingyan realized that the man in gray had traded a painting with that person. What's the background of that painting? She didn't pay attention just now, so she didn't know what was going on now. It's a peony painting by a famous painter in the Junlan Kingdom 100 years ago. Higashio Motetsu was a little helpless about her absent-mindedness. She was even distracted by an auction. Chu Qingyan nodded guiltily. She wanted to ask who the painter was, but she felt that she was too noisy. As expected, she didn't know anything and didn't have the right to speak. "Okay, then let's bid for the second treasure now." "Please bring it up," Jin Tong said methodically. As he spoke, a slim woman wearing a white rabbit mask walked up. Behind her was a man in black from the Lan Manor holding a tray. This tray was much smaller than the previous one. Chu Qingyan thought that it should be the heartless pearl. Sure enough, the White Rabbit woman removed the red silk with her own hands, revealing a bead with a faint green light. The woman held the bead and faced the crowd, clearly saying, "The heartless bead can ward off hundreds of poisons. As for its other uses, I won't explain too much." Once the heartless bead was revealed, as long as the main benefit was mentioned, it would be enough to attract people's attention. Out of the corner of her eye, Chu Qingyan noticed that the blue-clothed woman sitting not far away suddenly sat up straight. She was no longer as indifferent as before. Chu Qingyan pondered in her heart. This person probably came for the heartless bead. The heartless pearl repels poison and insects, and is a must-have item at home. It's normal for her to take a fancy to it. "Little girl, do you want to bid for the heartless bead?" Higashio Motetsu saw that she was no longer daydreaming, so he asked. Chu Qingyan wanted to shake her head, but when she thought of Big Ice Cube, she suddenly had the idea of competing. "Yes." Chu Qingyan nodded. Big Ice Cube's identity was sensitive, and he was often targeted by thieves. If she had the heartless bead with her, she could avoid some unnecessary trouble. At this time, the host wearing the jade mask asked, "May I ask what your conditions are?" "A woman's appearance and skin are the most important. My purpose here is very simple. I want to see if you have any ointment or secret formula that can slow down the aging of skin. Except for this, I won't accept anything else." As soon as the White Rabbit woman said this, the crowd began to whisper. Her condition was enough to make more than 90% of the people who wanted to bid for the heartless bead shrink back. Because most of the people who participated in the auction were men, those who could meet this condition were either women who had the ointment or secret formula, or were engaged in the women's cosmetics business, or were doctors who researched medicinal herbs. But looking at the reaction of the people below the stage, there were very few people who could meet this condition. Chu Qingyan touched her bag and smiled slyly. She was really a blind cat that had run into a dead mouse. She had asked Yen Luo to help her develop this medicine, but it actually came in handy at this time. Sensing the movement beside him, Higashio Motetsu turned to look at her. He was surprised to see her relaxed appearance. "You came prepared?" Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and smiled. "I hit the jackpot." At this time, the host knocked on the gong. "The auction begins. Go ahead." Higashio Motetsu patted her shoulder. "No, let's see what the others have first." Chu Qingyan wasn't in a hurry. Sometimes, the last one has the advantage. Higashio Motetsu understood. As soon as the host finished, Chu Qingyan saw that the woman in blue looked around. Seeing that no one moved, her eyebrows revealed a trace of complacency. Then she raised the plate on the table. "I'll do it." "Well, we have the first competitor. May I ask this lady, what goods do you bring?" The host immediately asked. Everyone turned their eyes to the woman in blue who slowly stood up. They were very curious about what she would take out in exchange. "I bring Yuji ointment." This Yuji ointment must have heard of it. The woman in blue's voice was a little delicate, as if deliberately, but in the man's ears, he enjoyed it very much. She took out the white jade bottle from her sleeve and showed it to everyone. The eyes of the woman with the White Rabbit mask lit up slightly when the woman in blue said the words, "Yuji ointment." Obviously, she was a little tempted. This Yuji ointment was developed by the famous Dr. Tong Xiao. She is best at women's ointment. As for its authenticity, you can try it first. The woman in blue handed the white jade bottle to the man in black beside her. He stepped forward and handed the bottle to the woman with the White Rabbit mask. In fact, Chu Qingyan didn't know about the beauty ointment of ancient women. When she saw the woman with the white jade mask open the bottle, her eyes flashed with the same light as her roommate's eyes when she participated in the shopping on Singles Day. She was so happy and excited that she wanted to get it immediately. This Yuji ointment should be the best beauty ointment. However, she was confident about what she brought because even Yen Luo, who was arrogant, loved it so much that she couldn't put it down. It proved that her ointment was more valuable. "This Yuji ointment is authentic. I have used it before." Hearing the words of the woman with the white jade mask, everyone felt that the heartless bead had almost found its owner. They also wanted the heartless bead very much. Unfortunately, the conditions proposed by the other party were too harsh. It was a pity that they couldn't meet it. Sister, do you like this Yuji ointment? Although the woman in blue was asking, it was obvious that she had the upper hand. The woman with the white rabbit mask hesitated. She had used the Yuji ointment before and knew its magical effect. However, she came here today to try a different beauty ointment. People had a strange heart. This Yuji ointment is good, but I want to see if there is a second competitor. The woman with the white rabbit mask closed the bottle and looked at the audience. Is there anyone else who wants to compete? If there is no one, then the owner will decide whether to trade with the first girl who raised the card. The Jade Woman host asked. The woman with the white rabbit mask hesitated and her eyes kept sweeping the audience. This made the woman in blue a little annoyed. Unfortunately, the decision was in her hands, so she couldn't say anything. She couldn't help but snort. Anyway, she was not in a hurry. This heartless bead would be hers sooner or later. She didn't believe that there would be someone who could take out a more precious top medicine than the Yuji ointment. Just as everyone thought that this round was about to end, Chu Qingyan raised her sign. I will. Chapter 434. As soon as the crisp voice fell, it immediately attracted the attention of the crowd. Inquiring, doubtful, and contemptuous gazes were thrown one after another. As soon as she saw that Chu Qingyan was young and dared to compete with her, the blue-clothed woman was somewhat annoyed at the sudden appearance of Qing Yaojin, but also very disdainful. Because she didn't believe that she could take out anything to compete with the Jade Muscle Cream. That white rabbit mask woman was originally somewhat happy, but when she saw Chu Qingyan stand up, her eyes suddenly turned to disappointment. What kind of amazing beauty medicine could a little child who hadn't even grown hair give her? She guessed that it was a child of some aristocratic family who was playing around. Most of the people under the stage had the same thoughts as the white rabbit mask woman, but there were a few people who had just come out of a funny room. For Chu Qingyan's performance just now was still vivid in their minds. To be able to take out a magnifying glass, this kind of thing that had never been heard of before, they thought that there must be other treasures. They were different from the other spectators who looked down on the play. On the contrary, they were very much looking forward to Chu Qingyan to give them other unexpected surprises. Little girl, what do you want to exchange? The golden boy host asked. His tone was neither humble nor arrogant. I also have a bottle of beauty cream. I want this big sister to see. Chu Qingyan generously said. This big sister doesn't believe that there is any ointment in this world that can compare to the Jade Muscle Cream. The blue-clothed woman looked at Chu Qingyan with contempt. Her words contained a sneer. When the blue-clothed woman's words fell, although the white rabbit mask woman felt that her words were unpleasant to hear, she also doubted whether Chu Qingyan could take out the beauty medicine that she wanted. The world is big, there are all kinds of rare treasures, nothing is impossible. A familiar voice like aged wine sounded. This voice wasn't loud, but it succeeded in making everyone's heart tremble. This voice came from under the stage. Everyone turned their heads to look, only to see the fox mask wearing all-knowing man of Gonghu sitting in the darkest corner, at this time holding a teacup, drinking tea. If he didn't take the initiative to speak, it was estimated that no one would notice his existence. Bai Xiaosheng actually spoke up for her. Everyone thought that since even Bai Xiaosheng had spoken up for her, they might as well see what she had to offer. Chu Qingyan didn't expect that Bai Xiaosheng would also come to the auction and help her. She cast a grateful look at him. Bai Xiaosheng felt Chu Qingyan's gaze on him, and a faint smile appeared on his face. He was not a busybody, but he was curious as to what the young lady was going to take out. He guessed that the item she wanted to trade with him was very likely the item she wanted to trade with him again. Higashio Motetsu couldn't help but laugh at this time. Little girl, it's up to you. Blind their eyes. What he enjoyed the most was when others thought they were infallible and then had a huge reversal, slapping them in the face. This kind of reversal was the most fun. Chu Qingyan nodded. She felt that many people in this world were like this. They liked to judge others by their own standards. It was a pity that you ignored me at this moment. Later, I will make you unworthy of me. Then, little girl, please show us your treasure. The golden boy host nodded to her. Chu Qingyan didn't say anything more. She directly took out a small green box from her bag. The box was also made of bamboo. It looked simple and had a faint bamboo fragrance. Although it was the first time seeing this kind of bamboo box, it was somewhat novel. However, it was more disdain. She couldn't even take out an ordinary sandalwood box. How poor was this family? The blue-clothed woman shook her head. This thing dared to be mentioned in the same breath as her white jade bottle? What a joke! However, the white rabbit-masked woman was a bit curious about this box. Chu Qingyan didn't care what they were thinking. This box was made by her based on modern jewelry boxes. It was light and easy to carry. She thought it was troublesome. Moreover, the residents had a lot of bamboo. She let Mu Ling chop a few for her to make a box. Using materials from the place, it wouldn't be a waste of money. Moreover, this was a beauty. If you don't understand, don't talk nonsense. The beauty cream that I brought is called Snow Heart Lipstick. When Chu Qingyan finished speaking, Bai Shaoxing wasn't surprised. It was something that he didn't know. However, it sounded quite novel. Snow Heart Lipstick? What is this? It can't be that it's just to fool people, right? In twos and threes, they whispered. Most of them were suspicious of the Snow Heart Lipstick. Chu Qingyan opened the box and turned the lid to the bottom. Tilting her palm slightly, the palm-sized thing was displayed in front of everyone. The bottom of the box was covered with white brocade. In the middle of the box, there were two concave places. In each place, there were two bamboo tubes that were as thick as a thumb. From afar, it was white and too green. The appearance was quite pleasing. But the blue-clothed woman started to speak. Little girl, you can't be saying that these two bamboo tubes have a beauty effect? The people here are not blind. Don't use this kind of thing to fool us. That's right, that's right. The man beside the blue-clothed woman echoed. The blue-clothed woman's words were also the thoughts of many people present. Even the gaze that they looked at Chu Qingyan with was a bit more disdain. Wearing a mask, no one will know who you are. Only then would you dare to look at people through the crack of the door. Tis. Little girl, don't disappoint this young master. This young master believes in you. Higashio Motetsu was watching the show from the side. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes at him and then looked at the white rabbit mask woman on the stage. It was as if she had returned to the time when she was selling products to passers-by on the street. That was her part-time job. Everyone knows that winter is the driest in 4 seasons. Every time at this time, our skin will suffer the ravages of this bad weather. But fortunately, our fingers can still be protected by a hand warmer. We can wear more clothes to keep warm. We can wear a hat to protect our ears. We can wear thick shoes and socks to protect our feet. But there is one place that we can't protect. That is our lips, because when we eat, we can't do without it. When we talk, we can't do without it. Our lips often shed and bleed because of the cold and dry. It is very uncomfortable. Chu Qingyan spoke with assurance. She didn't notice that the crowd slowly quieted down because of her words. Even the white rabbit mask woman was concerned. She continued. Because of this worry, there was a doctor who developed the Xuexin lipstick. Chu Qingyan took out one of the bamboo tubes, which was engraved with the word Xuexin. She put the box on the table and then held the bamboo tube with both hands. She smiled at the stage. Xuexin can moisturize the lips, keep them moist and glossy. It can fight against the bad weather and protect our lips. As she spoke, Chu Qingyan removed the lid, revealing a sharp, snow-white tip. Then, as everyone watched intently, Chu Qingyan's lips curled into a smile. She held the bamboo with one hand and held the lower half of the bamboo tube with 2 fingers of her other hand. Then, she twirled her fingers, and the snow-white tip slowly rose. Everyone was shocked. The little lotus showed its sharp corners and rose little by little. Chapter 435. It had to be said that the way this cream appeared was amazing. No one would have thought that a small bamboo pipe would be so flexible. And in winter, dry and cracked lips were indeed a problem that people had been annoyed. Even if they didn't go out in winter, they always had to go out to socialize. After hearing Chu Qingyan's words, some people subconsciously licked their peeling lips. The fingers of the woman with the white rabbit mask trembled slightly. It was the first time she had seen this thing. Cream, smeared on our lips, it can keep the lips moist and not easily absorbed by low temperature, Chu Qingyan said, then handed the cream to the black man in Lanzhuang. The black man immediately sent the cream to the stage. When the woman with the white rabbit mask saw the light bamboo pipe, Chu Qingyan timely said, "Sister, you can try to smear the cream on the back of your hand and feel it." People were alert. Although Chu Qingyan's words were very exciting, the woman with the white rabbit mask didn't dare to smear it on her lips. So when Chu Qingyan reminded her, the woman with the white rabbit mask didn't hesitate anymore. She smeared the cream on the back of her hand. The cold feeling was very comfortable. Soon, there was a clear difference between the smeared place and the unsmeared place. Today, in order to appear, she deliberately wore a light green gauze skirt. Just standing on the stage for a short while, the back of her hand had been dry and slightly painful. After smearing the cream, the pain in that place was obviously reduced a lot. And miraculously, the slightly cracked skin had obviously healed. The woman with the white rabbit mask felt very surprised. And she smelled it. This cream also had a light floral fragrance, refreshing the heart, transparent color. If it was smeared on people's lips, it could highlight the full lips. She was excited. She was stunned. "It's amazing." The words of the woman with the white rabbit mask made everyone look at Chu Qingyan's eyes a little different. That woman didn't need to deceive people. Most of the people who could appear here were people who didn't show their emotions. At this time, they were so surprised. It didn't seem to be fake. It could only be said that this thing was really amazing. Ever since Chu Qingyan took out the cream, the blue-clothed woman's expression had turned ugly. However, everyone loved beauty, so she calmed herself down and watched Chu Qingyan's next move. It was only when the white rabbit-masked woman cried out in surprise that her expression changed. Was she going to get nothing this time? The all-knowing man of Gonghu shook his head and smiled. It was really interesting. It seemed that his decision to not accept the challenge was right. Otherwise, today he would make a fool of himself 3 times. Dongting Wangyu looked at the cream in the hands of the woman with the white rabbit mask and turned to look at Chu Qingyan. This little girl had once again impressed him. He really didn't know how her little head could hold so many wonderful ideas. "Little girl, what's the other thing in your box?" The woman with the white rabbit mask was obviously very satisfied with this cream. She held it tightly in her hand and didn't let it go. Then she looked at the other bamboo tube. She was curious and couldn't wait to hear Chu Qingyan's explanation. Seeing that the other party had successfully taken the bait, Chu Qingyan's heart was half at ease. She took out another bamboo tube from the box and used the same method to spin it in front of everyone. "This is the heart ointment. I know that many ladies like to apply rouge on their lips. My heart ointment has the same effect as rouge, and it is used to add color to the lips. However, my heart ointment does not fade easily, and its color is different from rouge. You can apply the heart ointment after applying the cream. It can be used together with the cream, or it can be used on its own." Because of her words, everyone's gaze focused on the pink column-shaped heart ointment that was exposed at the tip. It was the first time they had seen this color. They were already used to women's red makeup. As the name implied, red makeup was red rouge. They really didn't know what a woman would look like if she put on pink. Some people had already begun to imagine. When the woman with the white jade mask saw the color, she had been fascinated. She had been tired of the red lips. Every woman had the same red lips. If she could have a pair of pink lips, how charming would it be? At this time, Bai Shaoxing was also fantasizing. If his wife put on this lipstick, what would it be like? He was already feeling restless. Chu Qingyan saw the woman with the white jade mask's fascinated look. She knew that she had almost succeeded. She didn't pretend to be pretentious. She closed the box and handed the heart ointment to the man in black. The woman with the white jade mask almost couldn't wait to take the heart ointment from the man in black. She tested it on the back of her hand again. The little girl didn't lie to her. This color was really beautiful. It was pink and tender, like a budding water lily. It was mysterious and serene. When she smelled it, there was the faint fragrance of the lotus, full of the smell of the seductive smell. The woman with the white jade mask admired it as if there was no one around. She had been looking for something for so many years. Finally, it was complete at this moment. She simply wanted to look up to the sky and laugh. Fortunately, her reason stopped her at the last moment. Little girl, how about I exchange my heartless pearl for these two things? The white jade-masked woman held one in each hand and did not return them to Chu Qingyan. She could not bear to let go of them. Although she tried to suppress her voice, everyone could hear that her voice was shaky and slightly agitated. Okay, beauty ointment for beauty. I just got it from someone else. But I'm still young and can't use it. So, I exchanged it with my sister. Chu Qingyan smiled sweetly. Her words were very pleasing to the ears. The woman laughed until her eyes couldn't be seen. Okay, deal. As soon as the voice fell, the golden boy host hit the gong. The exchange of heartless pearl and snow heart lipstick is successful. As soon as the words came out, the second round of exchange came to an end. The woman with the white rabbit mask bowed to Chu Qingyan and then walked down the stage happily. 1 for 2. She took advantage. The woman with the white jade mask was very shrewd in her mind. Unfortunately, she didn't know that Chu Qingyan could have as many as she wanted because she had two powerful helpers. One was Mu Ling, who had a group of apprentices, and the other was Yen Luo, who was good at making all kinds of medicine. She could have as many snow heart lipsticks as she wanted. Moreover, these two lipsticks didn't waste much material at all. They were all made from local materials. Who took advantage in the end? The blue-robed woman gripped the armrest tightly, unwilling to give up. She looked at Chu Qingyan with malice. But the situation couldn't be changed. Here was Lan Manor. She couldn't act rashly. She could only watch the heartless pearl and snow heart lipstick being taken away by the man in black. Princess, don't be sad. We will help you search all over Jiang country. We will definitely find a poison avoidance pearl like the heartless pearl. The subordinate beside the woman in blue whispered. I'm unlucky today. You continue to search. If you see the little girl, just take her directly. I don't believe that anyone dares to go against me. The woman in blue said unwillingly. Yes. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.